the moral bankruptcy of this is that if we want to build deterrence, we're the United States, or Israel for that matter, if we're talking about October 7th, we're strong enough to build deterrence. We cannot do it on the backs of those who are being held.
Mickey Bergman, thank you for coming on Hard Talk.
Thank you so much, Sarah.
That was Hard Talk. I'm Saroja Coelho. You're listening to CBC Radio 1. Have a great day.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. Always happy to be with you, especially this Friday morning when we're watching the sun come up over downtown. It's 3 minutes to 6 a.m. The show is on till 8:37 this morning, and thanks for making us part of your day. You might be on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or on YouTube this morning. For Winnipeg today, we have a sunny start to the day and then a risk of a thunderstorm late this afternoon, windy again, and a high of 21. Quite a similar day to yesterday. It'll be a little bit warmer. Let's say good morning to the team. Good morning, Corey Funk. Corey Funk been working so hard this week. Corey's our director on the show and also covers the commute. Abby Adeyemi, also hardworking behind the controls today, our technical producer on the program. Hi, Abby. Abby also covers weather on the show. And not to be outdone by Kevin Nipatebo. Good morning, Kevin. Kevin's behind the YouTube controls, and everyone's been just busting it out Friday morning, guys. We're going to have a good show. All right, let's get to news headlines and to more serious matters. Heather Wells is here also 2 minutes now to 6. And what are you understanding about the news this morning, Heather?
Good morning. Well, the father of an inmate who died after being held in solitary confinement at Headingley Correctional Centre is suing the Manitoba government for failing to keep his son safe. Jeffrey Owen Tate died in 2019. An inquest concluded he died by suicide after spending 23 days in segregation. The lawsuit filed by his father seeks damages from the province for members of the family. Well, there was hope, but in the end, last night's Bombers' regular season home opener didn't quite go the way they had hoped. A rematch of last year's Grey Cup saw Montreal beat the Blue and Gold 27-12. We'll hear more in our next local news coming up at 6:30.
Ugh, do we have to?
I know, sorry.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
A lot of happy faces in the crowd last night. I thought it was nice that actually the sun came out right when the game was about to start. So had probably a nice evening out there besides the score. Let's get into what's coming up in the first hour of the show. So calls kept coming in after the Collins segment on Radio Noon yesterday. They were asking what needs to be done to fix the province's teacher shortage. So we're going to hear more of those calls this hour. Also, for Pride Month, June, we're going to check in with advocates from Equal Canada on the state of rights and safety across this country. And we're also going to have a story about security in the city of Winnipeg. So we'll explain that after World Report. Stay with us.
Q with Tom Power.
Kaisa is the Juno-winning artist known for the dance hit Hideaway. That was 10 years ago, but in 2017, Kaisa was in a car accident that left her with a traumatic brain injury. Kaisa will be here to talk about her recovery and now her return to music. That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
Out. Marvin Alford is the president of ATU 113. He said it was a frustrating process.
I think we've started the road for our members to get the value that they deserve and they're entitled to get. I think we've started to get the protections that we need to protect not just transit workers, protect transit. That's what we're calling out. The TTC is actually actively working against itself when it comes to delivering transit.
And he says the TTC should have acted much sooner to get this deal on the table and not cause a lot of stress for TTC passengers. Earlier in the day yesterday, he'd said the two sides were at an impasse and that workers were prepared to walk off the job at 12:01 a.m. Wheel-Trans service would have kept operating. That's the service for people with disabilities, but everything else would have ground to a halt. Now, this isn't a totally done deal yet, John, because the details still need to be worked out, and then the deal will be presented to the union members. They still need to ratify it, and it's not clear when that will happen.
So, Megan, what does the Transit Commission have to say about all this?
Well, the head of the TTC, Rick Leary, calls this a good deal for the city and for TTC workers. He says this proves that negotiations can work. But as for why it took so long and went right down to the wire, he simply said negotiations aren't easy. Asked about job security, he says he understands that that was an issue for workers, and asked if he thinks they might be back at the bargaining table in a couple weeks. He says no, he's expressing confidence, John, that things will be okay and TTC riders will have reliable service for at least the next 3 years.
The CBC's Megan Fitzpatrick in Toronto. Thank you, Megan.
Thank you.
Well, the TTC strike has been averted. Other labour unrest is looming. Thousands of Canadian border guards at airports and land crossings are poised to take job action this afternoon. 90% of them are designated as essential, so it's not clear what form any job action might take. The two sides still talking through a mediator. Sticking points include wages, remote work, retirement benefits, and workplace protections. Tear gas and arrest as Montreal police break up a crowd of pro-Palestinian protesters at McGill University last night, bringing an end to the occupation at the university's administrative building. At least 15 people were arrested for breaking and entering and for interfering with police. Jennifer Yoon reports.
Tear gas, pepper spray, and makeshift barricades torn down forcefully. It took just minutes for Montreal police to disperse a crowd gathered outside the McGill administration building in support of pro-Palestinian protesters who had taken it over. Police say those on the inside were escorted out of the building. Rama Al-Mala is a spokesperson for Solidarity for Palestinian Human Rights McGill.
I just got tear gassed with a bunch of my other comrades, but morale is still high. And we're still here for the same reason that we were here on day one.
The protesters were calling on McGill to cut ties with Israel, something the school has so far refused to do, offering instead to look into divesting from weapons manufacturing companies and revealing its investments. Rula Juri Abisab is a professor at the university.
This is shameful because actually what should be happening right now is for the administration to be sitting with the students and listening to their demands.
A large pro-Palestinian encampment elsewhere on campus is still standing. 2 emergency injunction requests to dismantle it were rejected by the Quebec Superior Court. McGill's next legal challenge to the encampment will be heard July 25th. Jennifer Yoon, CBC News, Montreal.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says Europe is no longer a continent of peace. This as he meets Western partners in Paris today. Leaders at the D-Day commemorations in Normandy have also been drawing parallels between the Second World War and the conflict in Ukraine. Julia Chapman reports.
After Western leaders commemorated 80 years since D-Day, discussions turned to stopping the latest war on European soil. Volodymyr Zelensky is meeting the leaders of France and the US, both of whom bring new offers of military support. France will provide warplanes and train Ukrainian pilots and soldiers. America is putting forward a $225 million package, including munitions, mortar systems, and artillery rounds. In a speech at France's National Assembly, President Zelensky said Europe is no longer a continent of peace because of Russia's war. He said President Vladimir Putin is crossing line after line and warned that the conflict could spread. Against that backdrop, President Joe Biden will make another speech in Normandy today. At D-Day events, he urged allies to fight for democracy and stand up to dictators. He's expected to call for a rejection of isolationism and compare the sacrifices of the Second World War with those being made by Ukrainians today. His speech will be a message to some right-wing politicians on both sides of the Atlantic and a rallying argument for backing Ukraine. Julia Chapman for CBC News, London.
Some MPs took oil and gas CEOs to task for their industry's mega profits and high emissions yesterday. Senior executives from Imperial Oil, Cenovus and Suncor appeared before the House of Commons Environment Committee. Green Party MP Mike Morris questioned Imperial Oil's chief, Brad Corson.
Yes or no, do you support an excess profit tax on the profits of your company?
No.
Great. Do you support an emissions cap?
No.
Do you support any additional regulatory measures from the Government of Canada at a time when your industry's emissions are going up? Yes or no?
We have sufficient regulatory framework in place to continue to drive emission.
Well, I think what this demonstrates is it's going to be up to parliamentarians around this table to come together to find some kind of solutions, because I think we're hearing very clearly that the solutions are not going to come from the CEOs.
Executives told the committee that they don't need more government regulation. Left alone, they say, the industry can reduce its carbon footprint. Some analysts say China's electric vehicle industry could soon dominate the global market. And that has left governments in North America with a choice: protect domestic automakers by imposing tariffs on EVs from China, or make the environment a priority. More from Lisa Shing.
China's EVs account for more than half of all electric vehicles sold worldwide. That's according to Alla Kolesnikova. She's with the Toronto consulting firm Adamas Intelligence.
In China, there is an electric vehicle for any segment and any prospective buyer.
One car, the Seagull, launched last year by Chinese EV giant BYD, sells for as low as $13,000 Canadian. That's caught the attention of the Canadian and U.S. governments. U.S. President Joe Biden announced increased tariffs to 100% on Chinese EVs last month. The federal government here says it's considering similar measures.
That move is primarily politically driven.
Nate Wallace, Clean Transportation Manager with Environmental Defense, doesn't think tariffs are a good idea.
We need to be making clean technologies cheaper for consumers, not more expensive. Hiking tariffs takes us in the wrong direction.
Some analysts say for the price of local EVs to come down, more money needs to be invested in extracting raw materials to make batteries. More generous government rebates would also drive prices lower. Kara Clearman is the CEO of EV advocacy group Plug and Drive.
If you agree that we're in a climate emergency, we need to do everything we can to encourage people to make a switch.
While passenger EVs from Chinese automakers aren't in the U.S. and Canada yet, drivers like Clearman say they welcome them here because competition is good for consumers. Lisa Shing, CBC News, Toronto.
The latest jobs numbers are due out today. Some economists expect a modest increase in the numbers, but that the unemployment rate is likely to have trended higher. Earlier this week, the central bank lowered its interest rates, but analysts point out that that would have been too recent to affect the job market. Well, that is the latest national and international news from World Report. Remember, for news anytime, you can go to our website, cbcnews.ca. The top story this hour: Canadian retailer Simons is expanding. Can it succeed where its peers couldn't? The full story, cbcnews.ca. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
I warned him. I said, don't come in here. All righty. Morning. Oh. Morning, Yellowknife. Hey, Joanna. How are you doing? All righty. Yeah, let's do it. Hey, Joanne.
Election he lost. In 2023, Peguis First Nation voted Glenn Hudson out as the band's chief. Replacing him was Stan Bird. Hudson is now challenging that result. We'll hear more in our next local news at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Heather Wells, of course, with us throughout the morning. So is Abby Adiyemi and Corey Funk. Hi, you guys.
Hello. Good morning.
How are we all doing today? How's Friday, Corey?
Feeling good.
Good.
Looking
Abby?
bright outside for me.
Oh, I like that. What's the forecast tell us?
Clear and sunny at the moment, 11 degrees in Winnipeg. We're starting off with a sunny.
Women's final go.
Also coming with that, just a slim chance, and we'll see some areas in the city reported fog patches, which will be dissipating as we get into the morning. It will become breezy with winds picking up from the west later this morning, and today's high will reach 21. Tonight will be partly cloudy, a slim chance of showers also in the forecast, even a risk of thunderstorm, and then some fog patches would be developing again overnight. But in Winnipeg at the moment, it is 11. It's going to be a beautiful day, almost normal. The normal high for this period is 23, but today we're headed to a high of 21, and we're starting with some sunshine.
All right, thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
Corey, did you bike in this morning?
Sure did, yeah. It was a fairly smooth bike ride overall. Didn't see anything major to keep an eye out for, but if you do see something, if you're walking, biking, driving, give me a call. Let me know what you're seeing. That number, 204-788-3093.
So we're in the month of June. That means at the end of the month, there's going to be a lot of teachers who might be retiring. The question is, who's going to replace them? Yesterday on Radio Noon for the Call-In Conversation, they were talking about teacher shortages. It's an issue across this country and certainly here in Manitoba, not just for people retiring, but also for people that are just exhausted, burnt out, leaving the profession, and others questioning if they should go into teaching. So what needs to be done to retain educators and attract new teachers and keep students engaged? It was the topic of 12:30 to 1's Call-In Conversation on Radio Noon, but after the show, calls kept coming in. And so here's more of what you had to share.
It's Lynn Nickel calling. I am a teacher. What I wanted to shed some light on is with the increase in teacher stress and the complexity issues facing in classrooms, teacher morale is dwindling and almost to a point of epidemic, I would suggest. And, you know, from my perspective, I believe every student has the right and the ability to learn. And, you know, from my positionality, it's my privilege and responsibility to be part of that journey. And we all strive to meet every student's pathways to success. Have no doubt about that. But as the complexities and the issues within the classroom, you know, schools recently being deemed one of the third most violent, unsafe workplaces, you know, there's lots going on, as we mentioned, and it becomes increasingly more challenged to meet the learning needs of students, and this really does negatively impact teachers' sense of self-efficacy. We're all there for the right reasons, and we all have these aspirations to be part of the success journey for every student. And, you know, all of the issues that the wide variety of issues, plethora of issues talked about today, make that just increasingly more complicated. And yeah, it's tough. You want to do better. You know you can do better. You know there are other things that could be changed to support student success. And there's just so many barriers in place that prevent that from happening. And so the teacher morale is in crisis.
Hi there. I'm a teacher, educator in Winnipeg School Division. I think our young learners are, like was stated on the program, they're really struggling with screen time at school and at home, I was talking to some of my learners, and they're in middle years and high school, and their screen time is anywhere from 17 to 20 hours a day. And I think part of the problem is consequences in our schools. There's no divisional policy. There's no provincial mandates. It's left up to the schools and the classrooms, and there might be rules and expectations that discourage students from using cell phones, but our young people are addicted. Our literacy skills of the young people, it's abysmal. I think there's not enough consequences when students are stuck on their phones and they think that there will be nothing that comes of it. Somebody mentioned they might not graduate on time, and I'll talk to my students and say, if you try, you will pass. I can work with you if you are focusing and you try. If you try to work with the material that we're exploring. And they won't. And they sit on their phones, and I tell them I'm going to have a conversation with their family. They're adults, and they don't seem interested at all. So it's very tricky. I don't know if a provincial widespread rule is the answer, but I know that something is going to need to change because we're seeing some really big issues in our classrooms with phones. It's a hot mess.
Hi there, my name's Dave. I have a daughter who's currently in university to become a teacher, and I myself have, while speaking to her about it, are you sure this is something you want to do? Maybe the government of Manitoba could maybe offer free tuition or subsidized tuition for teachers. A lot of people are nervous to go to school, post-secondary education, for fear of death, especially in this day and age.
Hi there, my name is Dave. I don't like the idea of cell phones in the class really, but I've got 3 teenagers, last one's finishing high school, and they're bored to death. It's very, I find the system is pretty much a century-old style of teaching for people who came from, like all my ancestors came from homes that didn't speak English. So they had to learn that in school. It was a one-room school. And these kids have supercomputers in their pocket, and they can look on Wikipedia about anything they want to learn. So it just seems like a very antiquated system, and it's a different batch of kids who have weird attention spans. And yes, stopping phones in the class, but I think class times need to be reduced, and repetitive teaching needs to be reduced, and figure out something that works for how these kids are wired. Thank you.
Obviously, calls coming in after that calling conversation on Radio Noon that started all of this about teacher shortages. Manitobans weighing in. You can weigh in on the morning show anytime, of course, 788-3205. But the calling conversation's live. Today, they're looking at bike safety. So we'll talk more about that and hear more about it coming up on the program. It is right now, though, 6:19 and 11 degrees on your Friday morning. Lots of sunshine out there. Also sunny over in Brandon. It's 5 degrees there. Thompson is cloudy this morning, and you're just sitting at 1 degree. Well, we have new music for you. This is from Manitoba's Alexa Dirks.
Could I stay forever here? I thought I heard you say most other people disappear or seem to run away. Now I lit candles by my window, but only for I've never needed anyone. I'm happy on my own. To the mirror to see how things have changed. The light that shone behind my eyes somehow has rearranged. I trace the lines just like a map to remember where I've been. I've never needed anyone I'll never need again. I've never needed anyone, and I'll never need again.
That's a melancholy tune, hey? There's certain songs that you can imagine the moments in your life where you're going to be listening to them. That is Begonia by Alexa, a.k.a. Alexa Dirks, of course, from here in Manitoba. That's new music from her, by the way. Her album coming out in July. The new one's called Open Swim, and that tune's called Stay Forever. It is 6:23 a.m. on 89.3 FM. Well, I mentioned it's June. It is Pride Month, and over the weekend in Winnipeg, of course, on Sunday, we saw the largest turnout at a Pride parade ever in our community, 6,000 people walking through the streets of Winnipeg. But 2S LGBTQ plus advocates say that support is critical this year as the community continues to face hate and hostility. There's new global polling data from Ipsos today. It shows Canadian support for 2S LGBTQ plus rights and visibility is dropping compared to previous years. AJ Adams is here to talk about it, Manager of Communications at the advocacy organization EGAL Canada. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm well. So what were your thoughts when you saw this survey data?
It's disappointing, but we're not surprised at this data, unfortunately. In the past couple of years, we've been seeing an increased coordinated attack through misinformation, disinformation, malinformation on the 2S LGBTQI community, and specifically on trans and gender diverse folks. And EGAL's own research from fall 2023 shows that only 6% of Canadians have a close relationship with a trans person. So when we think about hatred coming from a place of fear and we fear what we don't know, it's no surprise when only 6% of Canadians know a trans person closely that these coordinated misinformation attacks on trans folks is working so well to the point that Ipsos is able to determine that there's a decrease in support for 2S LGBTQI folks in Canada.
Is there a safe way to articulate on the radio what misinformation you're talking about, what you've seen that concerns you that's out there?
Yeah, so we're seeing, again, various attacks in different areas. So we're seeing information attacking drag story times using some very offensive and derogatory terminology. We're seeing a misunderstanding of experiences for trans and gender diverse folks, especially when it comes to things like gender-affirming care. We often see statistics about regret rate of transition, which we know in reality is actually a very, very small number. So the percentage is often blown out of proportion. So it's often folks misunderstanding experiences, misunderstanding reports, but we're also seeing some methodologically flawed reports coming out of places like the UK being the CAS review, which a lot of other Western countries are quoting. So there's various sources for a lot of this, but it's attacking every aspect of life for queer and trans folks.
With what you've been talking about, how do you define the tone of this year's Pride season?
There's lots of words that come to mind, but the first one would definitely be resilience. As I mentioned, there is a increase in hate that's going on, impacting queer and trans folks. In fact, from 2018 to 2022, police reported hate crimes for queer and trans folks has increased by 164%. Even CSIS, our National Intelligence Service, has put out a national warning about threats for Pride events. So as much as there's a lot to celebrate, I think queer and trans folks across the country are really saying, we're done with this rise of hate. It's time to fight back. It's time to bring back the roots of Pride, which is Pride being a riot, Pride being a protest, and really say it's time to come together and fight back against this hate.
How can Canadians who want to show their support for the 2S LGBTQ plus community engage right now in a way that would be meaningful in your view?
Yeah, there's lots of ways that folks can engage, and it doesn't have to be anything big and grandiose. It can be something as small as learning and respecting and using properly someone's pronouns. It can be just learning terms, what the different flags means. It can be having difficult conversations, maybe with a homophobic or transphobic neighbor. But it's also important that we amplify voices of queer and trans folks, and particularly trans and gender diverse people. And EGAL has actually launched our 2024 Pride Season campaign that encourages everyone to see the person and not the label. So seeing that trans folks aren't just trans people, they have whole stories behind them. So I encourage folks to go to egal.ca/see the person to learn more about that campaign.
Whenever we look at statistics of things, it can be challenging because sometimes you say to yourself, well, is the problem growing? Which I'm not pushing back that it's, not growing. But what I'm saying is I'm wondering whether or not people are just also more emboldened to voice out loud their thoughts on things or maybe even their discrimination, like whether or not those voices of hate somehow have found a way through in 2024.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing that here in Canada. In the past couple of years, we've been seeing a lot of leaders within the Western world and arguably the entire world who share anti-trans and anti-queer views. And when our leaders are sharing those views, often the everyday people, if you will, feel more comfortable because if the folks that kind of lead our countries, lead our communities are saying certain things, we feel safe that we're able to share them. And that goes for whether you are pro-trans or anti-trans. So with having, again, a lot of leadership in the past couple of years coming to office in various countries, sharing anti-trans sentiments, it's one of the reasons why we're seeing a lot of these narratives kind of like taking root and being spread.
On the other side of things, we just did stories that March 31st now will be known in Manitoba as a Two-Spirit and Transgender Day of Visibility. The legislature here just passed that bill. What's the significance of that to you?
It's a huge significance. So before European colonization of Indigenous folks here on Turtle Island, Two-Spirit folks, which is a very generalized term, folks had different cultural, spiritual identities, and they all had different roles within Indigenous communities and societies. And when European colonization happened, it really stripped that away and put gender norms on. So having Two-Spirit folks recognized to this day and giving a day to really recognize that Two-Spirit folks exist and Two-Spirit folks, there's still a lot of work to do to support them and be allies so they can live their true authentic selves is super important. So it's exciting to see that a day is being dedicated for Two-Spirit communities. AJ
Adams, thank you very much for your time today.
No problem. Thanks so much for having me, and happy Pride.
Happy Pride to you. AJ Adams is the manager of communications at EGAL Canada. You're listening to CBC. So far, so good, so early in terms of the traffic situation. 788-3083 if you need to reach us. Coming up, business news. And if you're looking for a new place to rent, a new report says you will pay a pretty penny. But how much? Christly Round-McCann is here after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it is 11 degrees and beautifully sunny out there. We will see a few clouds move in with, again, a very slight chance of a shower, maybe even a thunderstorm, and windy today, warming us up to 21 this afternoon. Food trucks that plan to be at the Pembina Valley Pride event in Altona this weekend have pulled out. Pauline Emerson-Frobe is president of the group. She says after they announced which food trucks were taking part, someone threatened a business online.
Somebody threatened to tag their vehicle, to do damage to their vehicle. And because of that, the company, understandably, decided to withdraw.
Emerson Frobe says the Pride group has hired private security for the event. She says this isn't the first time threats have been made. Town officials say Altona police are aware of the threats and will be monitoring this weekend's events. A former chief of Manitoba's most populous First Nation has asked the federal court to set aside the results of an election he lost. CBC's Bartley Kivas reports.
In 2023, Peguis First Nation voted Glenn Hudson out as the band's chief and replaced him with Stan Bird. Hudson has asked the Federal Court of Canada to set aside that result. A special sitting is slated for Winnipeg in July to hear arguments in a judicial review. In court documents, Hudson says the election wasn't fair because 178 votes in an advance poll were nullified, 2 other advance polls were cancelled, and, he argues, there were problems with mail-in ballots. In an affidavit, Hudson blames Bird and his supporters for the nullified votes and cancelled polls, claiming they made threats and engaged in intimidation. In response, Bird denies playing any role in affecting the advance polls and says no threats or intimidation took place. Lawyers for Hudson and Bird declined further comment. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The Winnipeg Regional Health Authority bought land to build a new personal care home 8 years ago, but there's no plan to start construction. The former PC government promised to build the home near Polo Park Shopping Centre last year. The NDP government has put the project and other capital projects on pause for a review. Sue Vovchuk runs the Long-Term and Continuing Care Association of Manitoba. She has encouraged the NDP is building a home in Lac du Bonnet and promising to build 3 more, but would like to see it happen sooner.
Any progress you have is progress, right? So we're always, encouraged that things are moving forward. I think the frustration rests with the pace of the change and the pace of that progress.
Construction's expected to start in Lac du Bonnet later this year. The father of an inmate who died after being held in solitary confinement at Headingley Correctional Centre is suing the Manitoba government for failing to keep his son safe. Jeffrey Owen Tate died in 2019. An inquest concluded he died by suicide after spending about 23 days in segregation. The lawsuit filed by his father, Eugene Marvin Tate, seeks damages from the province for members of the family. The statement of claim alleges staff at the jail failed to properly monitor Tate's condition on the day he died. The province has not yet filed a statement of defense. Another potential strike is looming, this one by more than 9,000 workers at Canada's border crossings. Because 90% are considered essential, they can't walk off the job. However, they could work to rule, in turn, potentially slowing traffic between Canada and the U.S. The Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters Association says any job action would affect $3.1 billion in manufactured goods crossing the border every day. The union has set a deadline of 4 o'clock this afternoon Eastern, that's 3 o'clock Central Time. You can hear more on this story and other national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. A new study says the number of publicly funded physiotherapy assessments in Winnipeg has plummeted since all outpatient services were consolidated into a single facility. Researchers at the University of Manitoba say in the 23 months before that consolidation, there were more than 18,000 initial outpatient assessments, compared to roughly 6,700 assessments over the following 61 months. Joanne Parsons is an associate professor at the university's Department of Physical Therapy, and she is the study's primary author.
Being a physiotherapist isn't cheap, given the limitations on access to publicly funded physio now and the barriers to private care. We suspect that there's a large segment of the population that could be benefiting from physio care but is not able to access it.
Researchers looked at a database of all publicly funded musculoskeletal physiotherapy appointments in Winnipeg between January 2016 and December 2022. A lot of hope heading into last night's Bombers' regular season home opener. Fans filled the stands to watch a rematch of last year's Grey Cup. It was Winnipeg and Montreal. But it's not the key matchup one Bomber fan, Monique Danilchuk, hopes to see.
Oh, man, I just want to see them kick Saskatchewan. I just want to be here for the Banjo Bowl.
Well, in the end, the Bombers didn't kick anyone. Montreal takes the game 27-12. The Bombers next play next Thursday, squaring off against the Ottawa Red Blacks. You can find more news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Heather, stick around because I might need your support. There's some strange things going on in the studio.
Oh, my goodness.
Bleep, 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 bleep. Captain Marcusa, we have landed on planet Blorp.
What is happening?
Well, Grogu, a.k.a. Baby Yoda to some, is in the studio and feeling very at home because all over the studio and the control room, and you might catch a glimpse of this in the shots this morning, depending on what shot we're on, but there's those huge silver tubes all over the place, in the newsroom, Heather?
Yes, yeah, they're what, connecting air conditioners or something.
They are, because they're fixing our roof here. But we think it looks like almost like a set from a 60s version of Star Trek or something.
Like the cheapest sci-fi movie you've ever seen.
Yeah. So we've decided we take our alien mascot that usually lives in the Studio 15 control room. And he's pretty pleased this morning.
You guys are just playing around today. It's Friday.
It is so Friday. So Friday. All right, let's get into serious matters. Kind of serious matters, things that will affect your weekend. We're starting with sun again, Abby, but rain's still in our forecast.
Just a tiny bit. But it's sunny and clear outside. We're at 11 degrees at the moment. A sunny start in the city. Of showers with possible thunderstorm this afternoon. Light breeze winds from the west and will touch a high of 21. Heading west to Brandon, it is 5 degrees, also sunny at the moment. We'll see some clouds rolling later. A chance of showers, a risk of thunderstorm in the afternoon, breezy conditions, and a high of 21. Moving north to Thompson, it is 1 degree at the moment, and foggy. We're expecting a mix of sun and clouds, and then it's going to become cloudy later with a chance of showers. This morning fog for folks in Thompson will be dissipating later, and we'll see a high of 11. Further north in Churchill, it is 1 and cloudy. You're seeing periods of rain and drizzle, and then some fog patches will be dissipating this morning. And expected rainfall that we've been talking about, you should be seeing 5 to 10 millimeters, and you see a high of 2. Down in Dauphin, it is 10 and sunny at the moment. Cloudy conditions will come later, and then you'd see a mix of sun and clouds. A high chance of showers and a risk of thunderstorm this afternoon. You'll get to a high of 20. Gimli is at 7 and sunny for the Interlake region. Expect sunny conditions this morning, then a transition to a mix of sun and clouds with a chance of showers and a risk of thunderstorm in the afternoon, a high of 20. In Steinbach, it is 6 degrees and sunny this morning, and then we'll see a mix of sun and clouds and a chance of showers and thunderstorm this afternoon, high 21. And finally, Morris is sunny also, 8 degrees. Forecast for the Pembina Valley region includes sunny skies, then a mix of sun and clouds with a chance of showers and thunderstorm this afternoon, a high of 21. In Winnipeg, it's 11. We're heading to a high of 21, and we're enjoying some sunshine outside at the moment.
And I think we've all learned enjoy it.
Yeah.
Before it's gone.
All
right, let's get into the morning commute. Corey.
Yeah, if you're on your way to Pluto, if you're right around Jupiter, there's an asteroid. Got a call from Glorp on the commuter line.
Nice.
So
nice.
Look up for that.
He beamed you up on the computer line.
Beamed us up. But here down on Earth, actually no major issues right now. Haven't heard anything on the commuter line. But if you do see something going on, if you're walking, biking, driving, if you're on a spaceship, we'd love to hear from you too. Give us a call, 204.
$200 last month. That's up 9.3% compared to a year ago. The report by Urban Nation analyzes listings on rentals.ca, and it says this is the first time average asking rents have surpassed the $2,200 mark. The average for a one-bedroom was just over $1,900, up more than 10% from last year, and a two-bedroom was just over $2,300, up 12%. Now, prices for purpose-built and condo rentals have have gone up in every province, led by Saskatchewan, with a 21% gain to just over $1,300 per month. That was followed by Alberta and Nova Scotia, and then BC maintained the highest asking rents, an average of just over $2,400, followed by Ontario. And in Manitoba, rents increased more than 10% to just over $1,600 on average. Here's Giacomo Lattis, who is with rentals.ca.
It takes time to build. So even though that there's new measures that are coming now, it's going to take time before this new supply comes into the market. But what's interesting is that recently we saw that interest rates have started to go down. And what that's going to do is it's going to make home ownership a little bit more enticing. Because there's a big portion of renters right now who would otherwise transition to home ownership who haven't because interest rates are what they are. So what we do expect is that when housing becomes a little bit more affordable for those to transition into ownerships and get mortgages, that hopefully will bring more supply into the markets.
Now, for an average of more than $2,100, and that was 4 times the rate of the growth of condo apartment rents, which averaged just over $2,300 still, though.
To another story, we've heard so much news lately about department stores failing, but your story this morning actually is about a Canadian retailer that's expanding.
Yes, Simons is adding 2 stores in Toronto next year. It's been around for longer than most Canadian retailers, but when it comes to expanding, the Quebec company has never been in a rush. So in its 184-year history, the department chain has only amassed 17 stores, preferring to edge into markets rather than blanket regions completely and quickly. So recently, retailers such as Nordstrom, Ted Baker, Mastermind, The Body Shop, and Bed Bath & Beyond have either filed for bankruptcy, closed doors, or even left the country. And high inflation and interest rates have put a damper on consumer spending. CEO Bernard LeBlanc says the business will continue to be patient, though.
We cater to younger teenagers all the way through more mature adults. We have 70% of our assortment are exclusive brands that are designed in our offices in Quebec City, and we combine that with emerging Canadian brands and international recognized brands so that all of that offering comes to life and something that's relatively unique to how we go to market.
So the $75 million expansion is expected to increase the company's annual sales of more than $650 million. For the new locations to open by winter 2025.
True story. The only thing I ever bought at Simons was in Calgary covering the Grey Cup, and it was freezing. And I was outside interviewing fans at the parties and walking all over downtown with my microphone. It was so cold. It was iced over, and I was ducking in to try to protect my equipment. And I was so cold. I literally had like 5 minutes before I had to get to my next interview. I grabbed the first big sweater I could find at Simons. I'm like, please, what do you have?
Yeah, did it last? Was it?
I still got it. Yep.
Okay. All right. There you go. Because there's not a Simons in Winnipeg or Manitoba. No. But if people travel to other cities, maybe they can go. But it's hard to find a place to shop when you're like in your mid 30s, as I am, and I'm like, I guess this is where I should go. I don't know.
I just wanted warmth. Let's talk about the diamond industry before we look at numbers this morning, and how it's struggling and why it's in trouble.
Yes, so people are buying lab-grown diamonds, gold, and other colored gemstones instead. So a diamond is forever was coined by De Beers in 1948, but the company's largest shareholder, Anglo American, plans to divest as it restructures. So falling marriage rates and growing popularity for gold and lab-grown gems have driven down demand in a key consumer market, China. Diamond prices have fallen almost 6% so far this year, declining more than 30% from the all-time high in 2022. Paul Zimiski is an independent diamond industry analyst.
People were locked in, they couldn't travel. So they had this, discretionary income to spend and not a whole lot of places to spend it. So people bought hard luxury items, and diamonds did particularly well because people were giving more, emotional gifts because of the crisis, if you will. As the stimulus ran out and the economies opened back up and people could travel again, we saw kind of like a reversion of those fundamental factors.
but more expected engagements and climbing disposable market. Experts say the diamond industry has not done large-scale marketing for almost 20 years, so creating a want similar to luxury items like watches and bags is possible.
What's going on in the markets today?
In Europe, stocks are losing steam after the European Central Bank interest rate cut. Germany, the UK, and France are all down. In Asia, markets are mixed. Japan is down, Shanghai is up, Hong Kong is down. Oil is up 19 cents to $75.74 US per barrel. Gold is down $39.22 to $2,336.84 US per ounce. And the dollar is down 0.06 of a cent to 73.09 cents US.
Have an awesome weekend.
Okay, thanks, Marcy. You too.
With Business News on CBC, that's Crystalie Ramlichan. .46 a.m., 11 degrees in Winnipeg, lots of sunshine. And indie rock trio Valley says they were inspired by Bruce Springsteen and the Killers for this latest single. See if you can hear the influence. You can already hear the Springsteen in there. This tune's called When You Know Someone on CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube.
Think you know someone so well, and then they break your heart. It's never equal parts. Oh well. Jump ship right there in mid-ocean. Now the sinking hand means one less thought I'm holding. Your secret life cut me open. Too proud to say so. I'm not what you are. When you know someone, you really know someone. Someone like me. Thought I knew you well. Had you to myself. So sick of trying too little and trying too hard. Expecting me to find you when you left me in the dark. From strangers to friends, to strangers again. I knew from the start this is how it would end. Jump ship right there in mid-ocean. Now the sinking hand means one less that I'm holding. Your secret life cut me open. Too proud to say so. I'm not what you are. When you know someone, you really know someone.
It's acoustic end there. That is a Toronto-based trio Valley. When you know someone, you could totally hear the Killers all over that track. By the way, if you're out and about or you want to take a road trip and you liked them, you can check them out. July 9th in Calgary, they're playing the Stampede. It is 9 minutes now to 7 o'clock on 89.3 FM. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is CBC. 11 in Winnipeg, 5 in Brandon, 1 in Thompson. Sunny to start in Winnipeg, chance of showers later this afternoon. Well, it is something that we're hearing all over the city. Business owners, service providers, and now the Concert Hall and Museum locking their doors during the day due to challenges with theft and other threats. Up next on the show this morning, we visit a longtime family business out on Higgins where the owners say things are getting out of hand. Ryan Gobil's family has owned a Eliminator RC hobby store for 3 decades, but he says at their store at 120 Higgins at Waterfront Drive, there's only so many times you can patch the security fence.
This is the parking lot behind our business, and this is where a lot of the locals like to come and hang out. But our fence was cut behind the garbage can. You can see the patch panel I had to put in here.
Oh, God.
This was all a locked compound on the other side, but now that the King's Hotel has been closed down, it's not looked after, and they have cut a big hole in the fence to get through back here, so the owner just opened it up and took his garbage can out so they couldn't have fires. But now they have cut a hole in the walkway fence, and the ladder for the signage up there the lock's been cut on it, and they go up there on the roof of the King's Hotel, and they hang out up there, and they graffiti it and do all sorts of things up there.
What's it like here in the wee hours of the morning?
It's busier in the middle of the night than it is during the day with walking traffic, that's for sure.
I spoke with Ryan on Tuesday after the most recent security breach they had, which was last weekend, and as you'll hear, he has concerns for everyone involved. What would you like to see the future of the neighborhood be around your business?
I would like it to be respected a bit more, cleaned up after, because I feel like it's kind of getting forgotten and it's being pushed to the wayside a little bit.
Yeah, what makes you say that? What are you seeing?
Just the amount of garbage on the streets and the people camping and sleeping all over and taking it over and treating it that is their area, not the business owners and residents' area.
What would you like to see in terms of growth here?
I'm not too sure if I really have a plan of action I'd like to see, but I would just like to see what is here taken care of more so, and the residents that are here looked after versus bringing more people in here when the people are here aren't being taken care of.
What do you mean taken care of?
Just like making sure that the businesses are okay and like our streets are taken care of and resources are taken care of, because I feel like it's kind of gone by the wayside just because of what we are and everybody's aura of the area.
What's it been like for you around here? I know that you guys had a challenging weekend.
This is a challenging weekend out of many. We've had many problems, especially over the last 2 or 3 years. It's gone really bad. And we've been in the area for over 20 years, almost 30 years, I believe, as my family as a whole. And in the last 4 years, it's been the worst it's ever been, and it's only getting worse.
And you mean worse in terms of what? Tell me what you've been facing as a business owner.
People just getting in to make a mess, trying to break into compounds, taking stuff, trying to just camp out here. Like it's been getting bad all over, harassing customers when they come in here. It's not a good scene sometimes. They cut the fence all the time. It's like a game to them. They'll cut locks and fences and push open doors and whatever they need to do. We have a locked front door now just for the safety of our customers, because that's the way you have to conduct business here because of the way that people just walk in.
When did you have to start locking the door?
We locked the door in 2021, and it's been like that ever since.
And before that, did you ever have to lock the door?
We never had the locked door. We had the occasional walk-in of somebody that didn't belong in here, but it's a lot more, I would say, common nowadays. There's at least once or twice a day there's people that should not be in here that are not let in here.
What's that like for you? How's it affected you coming to work?
It's never a thing you look forward to doing, but you got to do it to protect the integrity of your family and your business, and nobody wants to come shopping in here and have to worry about that, so we'll take that away from them and deal with it ourselves.
Yeah, lots of stress, though, to deal with that yourself. Is there any support that you could have either at the city or provincial level to sort of improve that for you? Because businesses across the city have been sharing similar things with us, that they carry the stress of having to manage that often on a daily basis.
I would love for there to be something to do, but it's gotten to the point now where if you call the police with a problem, they don't even respond. We had an attempted break-in last year, and they didn't come to 4 days later, and they told us not to enter the building until they had made it here.
So what did you do? Did you have to shut down for 4 days?
No, we opened up and took care of it ourselves.
What does it mean to take care of it yourself?
We had to make sure that it was secure and everything like that. We had to make sure there was nobody in here, and we had to make sure that it was all taken care of and closed up properly. And you give them the camera footage whenever you can to help them solve it, but it never gets solved.
So in the provincial budget, they had some provisions for cameras on properties to try to make things safer.
Cameras don't do anything, because it's at a point now where when they're doing stuff, they wave at the cameras and they smile because they know that there's nothing going to come of it.
So that's brazen behavior that you're describing.
Oh yeah, they're flaunting it right in front of your face. They know what they're doing is wrong, and you can watch them do it because there's nothing going to happen to them.
Are there repeat folks that you would find that are involved in this, or is it rotating and just a bigger rampant problem than that?
Rotating. It's multiple people, not even the same two, and it happens all the time. You can drive down the street here in Point Douglas and you can see it happening quite often with bikes being stripped and wires being stripped on the side of the street. And where are they getting this stuff? They're taking it from somewhere. Just by Main Street and Maple there, they have a big camp set up. There's camps been set up all over Higgins over the past 3 or 4 years, and it's gotten so bad there is like a scrapyard storage bin. They just took the fence right off there because they got tired of fixing it and people breaking in there. It's happening here a lot. There's a lot of fires in the area from fires being started by people that are camping out and doing everything they need to do in buildings, and it's just not a good environment.
Any thought on solutions?
I think more resources for people that actually need help that are obtainable, because it seems like it's not obtainable for a lot of people, so they switch to the street ways of life because they think that's easier, and I don't think that it's being addressed properly right now. I think that if everybody banded together and did the best they can like we are, that it would be a better place, and I think that maybe if we set a good example, it wouldn't be as concentrated here. It would be more pushed out differently, or people would change their ways, but I don't think it's going to make much of a difference. You just got to keep positive and doing what you're doing to make it work.
So you didn't mention policing. What's the nature of that? You talked about police response, but what's the nature of actual out there seeing police in the neighborhood like?
I feel like years ago when you used to see the area a lot better, there was more police presence. You would actually see them driving around in the area, keeping tabs on things. Now, lately, you haven't seen very much of them. You can walk outside and not see them at all, whereas you usually see one an hour before. This was always an area that was maybe not as nice to the eyes. It wasn't as predominant as other ones because it was more industrial. But now you have the drug use, the items being stolen, the camps, the fighting, the robbing, like everything happening out in broad daylight. And it's not fair that it's so concentrated in this area because everybody just gets pushed into it and held here.
Thanks a lot for speaking with me.
Thank you for coming down to our location and visiting us.
You're welcome. Ryan Gobill, his family has owned a Eliminator RC hobby store for more than 3 decades down on 120 Higgins. Now, in response to Ryan's concerns about police response time, there was a story we covered just last week. Another business owner was critical of police and the length of time it took for a response. Winnipeg Police Service Inspector Gord Spado told reporters, quote, "As much as we'd love to be at every event as soon as possible, we have to deal with the life safety issues first," end quote. And you can read more about that and that story at our website this morning, cbc.ca/Manitoba. Let's get to other headlines. Heather Zand, good morning.
Good morning. Well, some Winnipeggers are frustrated at the province's delays in building personal care homes. 8 years after the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority bought land near Polo Park for a new care home, there's still no sign of construction. We're going to hear from a woman whose mother has been on a waiting list for a bed in a care home. And the father of an inmate who died after being held in solitary confinement at Headingley Correctional Centre is suing the Manitoba government for failing to keep his son safe. Jeffrey Owen Tate died in 2019, an inquest concluding he died by suicide after spending about 23 days in segregation. Those stories and more Manitoba News coming up at 7:30.
Also coming up.
It takes a calm, cool mind. You got to be relaxed when you play.
We're going to meet a Manitoba pinball wizard who is headed to the World Championship. Stay tuned for that. In Winnipeg right now, it's sunny. It's 11. Our high today, 21. This afternoon, we have a risk of a thunderstorm late in the day. And it's going to be windy again, winds gusting 30 to 50. The commute so far has been cooperating. 788-3093 if you do see any problems that we should be reporting. Well, in addition, in the next hour of Information Radio, will it be McDavid and the Edmonton Oilers or former Jets coach Paul Maurice and the Panthers? We'll find out who Winnipeggers are going to be cheering for in the Stanley Cup final. And we will take you back to court this week to build on what you've heard on the news and look at whether an admitted Winnipeg serial killer should be found not criminally responsible.
On The Current.
Welcome to Gospel Choir here at the Faculty of Music. I'm delighted to have such a huge group of students with us.
For the first time in its 100-year history, the University of Toronto's Faculty of Music is offering a course in Black Gospel Choir music. What that means for the place of Black music in history and for students coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report.
Good morning, I'm John Northcott. Millions of commuters who rely on public transit in Toronto are feeling a sigh of relief. TTC will operate normally after the threat of a strike was averted with a last-minute agreement. The union local representing nearly 12,000 TTC workers says it has agreed to, quote, a framework settlement with management. For more on this, the CBC's Megan Fitzpatrick joins me from outside Toronto's Greenwood subway station. Megan, let's talk about what the union is saying about the deal.
Well, they're saying they've reached a tentative agreement for a 3-year contract. We don't have too many details on what's in the agreement, but we know they were negotiating over improved benefits for workers and pensioners, wages, and also job security. They were saying they wanted assurances that jobs wouldn't be contracted out. Marvin Alford is the president of ATU 113. He said it was a frustrating process.
I think we've started the road for our members to get the value that they deserve and they're entitled to get. I think we've started to get the protections that we need to protect not just transit workers, protect transit. That's what we're calling out. The TTC is actually actively working against itself when it comes to delivering transit.
And he says the TTC should have acted much sooner to get this deal on the table and not cause a lot of stress for TTC passengers. Earlier in the day yesterday, he'd said the two sides were at an impasse and that workers were prepared to walk off the job at 12:01 a.m. Wheel-Trans service would have kept operating. That's the service for people with disabilities, but everything else would have ground to a halt. Now, this isn't a totally done deal yet, John, because the details still need to be worked out, and then the deal will be presented to the union members. They still need to ratify it, and it's not clear when that will happen.
So, Megan, what does the Transit Commission have to say about all this?
Well, the head of the TTC, Rick Leary, calls this a good deal for the city and for TTC workers. He says this proves that negotiations can work. But as for why it took so long and went right down to the wire, he simply said negotiations aren't easy. Asked about job security, he says he understands that that was an issue for workers, and asked if he thinks they might be back at the bargaining table in a couple weeks. He says no, he's expressing confidence, John, that things will be okay and TTC riders will have reliable service for at least the next 3 years.
The CBC's Megan Fitzpatrick in Toronto. Thank you, Megan.
Thank you.
Well, a TTC strike has been averted. Another job action is looming. Thousands of Canadian border guards at airports and land crossings are poised to take job action this afternoon. 90% of them are designated as essential, so it's not clear what form any strike action might take. The two sides still talking through a mediator. Sticking points include wages, remote work, retirement benefits, and workplace protections. We just found out about the latest job numbers within this hour. Some economists expect a modest increase in the numbers, but that the unemployment rate is likely to have trended higher. Earlier this week, the central bank lowered interest rates, but analysts point out that that is too recent to affect the job market. Tear gas and arrests as Montreal police break up a crowd of pro-Palestinian protesters at McGill University last night, bringing an end to the occupation at the university's administrative building. At least 15 people were arrested for breaking and entering and for interfering with police. Jennifer Yoon reports.
Tear gas, pepper spray, and makeshift barricades torn down forcefully. It took just minutes for Montreal police to disperse a crowd gathered outside the McGill administration building in support of pro-Palestinian protesters who had taken it over. Police say those on the inside were escorted out of the building. Rama Al-Mala is a spokesperson for Solidarity for Palestinian Human Rights McGill.
I just got tear gassed with a bunch of my other comrades, but morale is still high. And we're still here for the same reason that we were here on day one.
The protesters were calling on McGill to cut ties with Israel, something the school has so far refused to do, offering instead to look into divesting from weapons manufacturing companies and revealing its investments. Rula Juri Abisab is a professor at the university.
This is shameful because actually what should be happening right now is for the administration to be sitting with the students and listening to their demands.
A large pro-Palestinian encampment elsewhere on campus is still standing. 2 emergency injunction requests to dismantle it were rejected by the Quebec Superior Court. McGill's next legal challenge to the encampment will be heard July 25th. Jennifer Yoon, CBC News, Montreal.
MPs are now under pressure to propose changes to Bill C-70 that would give new powers to security agencies to crack down on foreign interference And there is new urgency after an intelligence watchdog report earlier this week. Janice McGregor has more on this. Janice, yesterday, Public Safety Minister Dominic LeBlanc assured Canadians that people who have chosen not to respect Canadian law will be held to account. But what do we know about what the RCMP is actually doing in the meantime?
Very little, John. Although the RCMP late Wednesday did take the extraordinary step of issuing a public statement confirming that it recently received what it called additional information about election-related interference, and saying it has now initiated investigations, plural. But that statement also warns that if police talk publicly about their active criminal probes, that could not only interfere with ongoing investigations, but also damage individual reputations before they're even sure they have enough proof to prosecute a case. We do know that these investigations are recent because the special committee of parliamentarians that reviewed the classified intelligence, it submitted its unredacted version of its report to the government in March, and that report said Mounties weren't investigating interference at the time of the last two elections. No one's revealed yet exactly what new intelligence got passed on that set law enforcement in motion.
Even as the government and law enforcement are under fire for not doing enough, there are concerns that this bill goes too far. What are those?
The Public Safety Committee, that's doing a very quick review of C-70, heard from groups that are asking Parliament to slow down and think twice yesterday, amid concerns that the bill's new powers for intelligence agencies and law enforcement risk trampling on charter rights. Here's Ahmad El-Qadi from the National Council of Canadian Muslims.
If the bill was passed tomorrow, a current government could identify protest activities that they just don't agree with and penalize them under the pretense that they're aiding, a foreign entity.
In other words, a bill trying to protect democracy from foreign interference threats might actually stomp on democratic rights and freedoms in other ways. Well, there's an urgency to get this bill in place before the next election. Civil liberties groups want parts of it hived off for more careful examination.
Janice McGregor in Ottawa. Thanks, Janice.
You're welcome.
City crews continue to search for the source of a catastrophic water main break in Calgary's northwest. The Bearspaw South Feeder Main is the most critical line in the city's water system and serves people in Airdrie, Chestermere and Strathmore. The break happened in the Bowness area, and that community remains under a boil water advisory. Canadian oil and gas CEOs are pushing back against a proposed emissions cap. Top execs from Imperial Oil, Cenovus and Suncor appeared before the House of Commons Environment Committee yesterday. They were there to answer questions about their high profits and their high greenhouse gas emissions. David Thurton reports.
How do you sleep at night when there are climate fires ravaging our country, when people are displaced from their homes?
NDP climate critic Laurel Collins dressing down oil and gas chief executives at a House of Commons committee. Collins wanting to know how they feel, leading companies responsible for what some are calling planetary breakdown.
When hundreds die in heat domes, how do you sleep at night?
The question did not sit well with Suncor CEO Rich Kruger.
I appreciate your desire to create headlines, point fingers, and attempt to villainize the industry and in it. But what I would say, when you do that, you're actually attacking hundreds of thousands of Canadians nationwide that work hard each and every day to provide energy in support of this country.
Conservatives like Alberta MP Damien Kirk defended a sector that underpins the national economy and employs more than 400,000 Canadians.
While the Liberals seem to want us to freeze in the dark and be poor, I think it's time to support an industry that actually can build our economy and provide the world the energy that we need, including at a lower emissions rate than our global counterparts.
Execs told the committee they don't need more government regulation. Left alone, they say, industry can reduce its own carbon footprint while at the same time increasing production. The reality is, though, emissions from the oil sands keep going up. David Thurton, CBC News, Ottawa.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. If you're looking for tools to talk about the day's big stories with the little people in your life, check out CBC News kidsnews.ca. That's cbckidsnews.ca. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
the group says they've announced which food trucks were taking part, and then someone threatened to damage their vehicles. Emerson Frobe says it's not the first time threats have been made. We'll hear more from her coming up. And a former chief of Manitoba's most populous First Nation has asked a court to set aside the results of an election he lost. In 2023, Peguis First Nation voted Glenn Hudson out as the band's chief and replaced him with Stan Bird. Hudson now is challenging that result. Your next news coming up at 7:30.
Hi there, Abby Adiyemi.
Hi, Marcy.
Yesterday morning when the sun came out, you had ear-to-ear smile and you actually went, woohoo! How about today? How you feeling over there?
Still feeling the same. I just had to pull the blinds because I was almost getting blinded by the
pretty
lights.
Bright, eh?
It's pretty bright outside. It's sunny. We're at 13 degrees. We're starting off with these sunny conditions. However, we're going to be seeing a mix of sun and clouds later with a chance of showers this afternoon and a risk of thunderstorm late in the afternoon. We're looking at a high of 21 today. Tonight will be mainly partly cloudy, a chance of showers also into the evening period and a risk of thunderstorm. And we should be seeing some fog patches developing overnight. The winds will ease off and then become light and will drop down to a low of 10 degrees tonight. Tomorrow, Saturday, it's going to be something similar, a mix of sun and clouds, a chance of showers late in the morning and into the afternoon period and risk of thunderstorm. But right now in Winnipeg, it is 13. It's beautiful outside, lovely sunny sky I see, and we will see a few clouds moving later again and then a slight chance of showers and even maybe thunderstorm and windy today.
All right, thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
Well, the morning commute is quiet, so we're going to take an opportunity to actually look ahead because Corey Funk is actually here, of course, but he's also hosting Radio Noon today for Janet, and that means he's going to be navigating through the call-in conversation between 12:30 and 1, and it has to do with commuting, actually.
That's right. I know recently, just in the last day, we've had 2 incidents involving cyclists, one of them fatal. So we're going to be talking bike safety today on Radio Noon. We're asking you to call in. If you're a cyclist, share your experience out there on the road. I know a lot of avid cyclists probably have their stories of close calls. What do you want to see to make things safer on the road for you? If you're a driver, what do you want to make things safer for you and cyclists as well? We're going to be joined by the head of Bike Winnipeg, who's going to join us as well to help to take your calls. We're going to have a conversation with him too. So that's going to be our call-in conversation today.
Now, we like to mention it early on the program, and I know on YouTube you're seeing our traffic line. Please call if you have any traffic. I mentioned it was quiet, 788-3093. But the other number that I'm just going to throw it on the radio here is if you can't join Corey for the conversation between 12:30 and 1 and you want to weigh in, you can always leave a message on the Radio Noon listener line. And it is 788-3797, 788-3797 if you want to weigh in about how to share the road. Well, as I mentioned at the top of the hour, a Manitoba man's pinball skills have launched him into international notoriety. Drew Sitch is one of 2 Canadians competing at a prestigious international tournament this weekend in California. The International Flipper Pinball Association World Championship is in its 19th year. It features 80 of the world's greatest pinball players. CBC Manitoba community reporter Shanley Vidal stopped by Drew's workplace where he stores his collection of 40 pinball machines.
I'd go with a co-worker after work, and we used to play at a convenience store down in the Maples, and we'd play Terminator and we'd play Doctor Who and Fishtails, and they were just great games, and I fell in love with it. And unfortunately, the convenience store closed down. I bought a Terminator 2, and that's close to my heart because that was one of the first games I played on at that convenience store. So that was really important for me to get one of those. It's very flowy. It's a very flowing game. So you shoot the ball to a ramp, and it comes back to your flipper, and it's got a skull in it, and you shoot the ball into the skull, which then goes into a cannon.
Judgment Day.
So now I put the ball in the cannon, so it's going to go right there, and then I'm going to shoot the ball, and now I'm going to get multi-ball, and I'm going to shoot for the jackpot. So up here, if I get it, I'm probably not going to get it. I didn't get it.
When did you know that you were going to be going to compete against people from all different countries in the World Championships?
I got the invitation in January after our provincials. I got the invite emailed to me because I was one of the top 2 competitors that won provincials in Canada that was a high enough rank to qualify for Worlds.
What was your reaction when you got the news?
It was pretty amazing. I had a friend texting me the night before saying that I had made it, and I was just texting him all night that I didn't believe him, and I'm like, I'll wait for it when I see it, right?
What's going through your mind right now?
Pretty nervous. I'm kind of an underdog going in. There's a lot higher ranked players there, but I think, if I'm playing on a good day, and I've played with some of those guys before, I can definitely hold my own. Every game you can take the glass off of it to get access to the different components to fix them. And pinball machines are pretty complex underneath, and there's a lot of wires. So this one right now, there's a broken wire on the drop target, so I was going to fix that. Pinball, it's a physical game. You got a physical pinball. It's actually quite a heavy ball, and you got this big metal ball hitting into pieces of plastic, so something's gonna break.
Some of these machines are pretty old, I understand.
Yes, my oldest machine is Skill Pool. This is from 1962. This is the era they still had mini flippers, they still had gobble holes in the play field. This is one of the first games with a drop target in it, so it's definitely a pretty neat game to own.
So if some of these machines are so rare, how do you get your hands on them?
You just gotta scour the internet, and you get tips from other people and phone calls and text messages, and sometimes someone's grandma has an old pinball machine sitting in her basement, and she doesn't need it anymore because the grandkids are all growing up. I Googled pinball in Winnipeg, and I found the Manitoba Pinball League, and I've met some of my best friends and just had some of the most fun.
What's it like for you when you have people come here to play your games and you see that enjoyment they're having?
That's one of my favorite parts of the hobby. Believe it or not, I don't play my games that often. My favorite part is when I have tournaments or I have friends over and we just have a fun night and play pinball. That's one of my favorite parts of the hobby, is the community.
I'll be back.
Little Arnold there at the end, clearly a Terminator game. That was CBC Manitoba community reporter Shanley Vidal speaking to competitive pinball player Drew Sitch. Drew, as we mentioned, will represent Canada this weekend at the World Pinball Championships. By the way, if you want to get involved in the game, you can reach out to the Manitoba Pinball League online. They are manitobapinball.com.
On the topics that matter, your voice should be heard.
I'm really concerned. And I'm not really happy about that.
Radio Noon is where you can voice your take. I'm Janet Stewart. From 12:30 to 1 p.m., Radio Noon opens the phone lines on one important topic.
It just brings everyone together.
Radio Noon's call-in segment, 204-780-0893. We want to hear from you, weekdays on CBC.
So today's call-in is about cyclist safety. 788-3797 to leave a message now. It's 13. It's sunny in Winnipeg. Today's high 21, a little bit windy. Chance of a thunderstorm late this afternoon, but otherwise sunny for the day. Morning sports in a few minutes. We'll talk about the Bombers home opener. Beautiful night for a game in the end, but didn't turn out so great against the Alouettes, but we'll hear more about it in a moment. We have time for music, though, and this is from Alex Cuba this morning. Alex Cuba's latest album is a family affair. It's called Voice voices of my family. It features singing and stories from his brother, his father, his uncle, aunt, and his mom. His mom's contribution is in the song we're going to play this morning. It's a song that celebrates the incomparable love and taste that goes into a mother's cooking. It's called No Cocina Cualquiera.
Yo quiero que a ti te guste como cocino la cena.
Con mucho sabor, muchas cosas buenas.
Porque lo que yo preparo no lo cocina cualquiera.
Dicen que yo sé, ay, mamá, jugar con candela.
Se escuchará en todas partes cuando mi cocina huela. El murmullo de la gente
que sale de mi cazuela.
Oh, oh, como cocino yo, no cocina cualquiera. Vaya.
Muchacho,
oye ahora dice. Llegaron los invitados, ponle a la mesa más sillas.
Que hasta un español vino de Sevilla,
buscando donde se come hasta romperse la hebilla.
Está muy claro, señor, aquí hay maravilla.
Y siguen los comentarios, volando de esquina a esquina, que yo me haré millonario
a cuenta de mi cocina.
Oh, oh, como cocino yo, no cocina cualquiera. ¿Qué? Cocina cualquiera.
Seguro que no.
Ay, dilo, María.
No. Que no cocina cualquiera como yo.
Ese pollo.
Ay, Dios. Eso digo yo.
Candela.
Dime si quieres probar. Yo sé que te va a gustar.
Sabro.
Como cocino yo.
No sé. ¿Cómo cocinas tú, mi vieja?
Muchacho.
Muy rico.
Sabrosura.
Vacilón. Cualquiera. Sí. Mira, como tú, mi vieja, nadie en este mundo sabe cocinar. Y si tú quieres gozar, vete a buscar a María. Ey, yo lo sé.
Sabrosura.
Qué rico los tostones.
Como cocino yo.
No cocina cualquiera.
I loved hearing his mom's voice in there, Alex Cuba and his mother. And it was No Cocina Cualquiera, Not Just Anyone Cooks, the name of the tune. And his whole new album is all with family members on the different tracks. Very cool. Well, speaking of the importance of eating and family, we want to congratulate Megan Fiddler and the team that put together Time to Eat, a half-hour documentary that you might have seen online. When CBC Indigenous teams get together, more often than not, their conversations turn to food, and that sparked the whole series looking at food and culture and Time to Eat. Now, the congratulations comes because Time to Eat won a Canadian Screen Award for Best Lifestyle Programmer Series this week, and we couldn't be more thrilled for the whole team here from CBC and from CBC Manitoba representatives and Megan Fiddler, a producer, accepting that award this week. So huge congratulations and big shout out also to Kevin Ipatebo, who's part of our morning crew team. Hi, Kevin. Yay! I'm waving at Kevin behind the glass this morning. Kevin's working the YouTube controls for the morning show here, but Kevin was part of that team in developing it and shooting it. So really good work. If you haven't yet checked out the series, you can always find it online on your CBC streaming platforms. Time to Eat. So big congrats and check it out. It is 7:25 a.m. on 89.3 FM, 990 a.m. on the app or YouTube. Let's get to morning sports. Scott Reguera is back with us today. Hi, Scott.
Hey there, Marcy.
So we've been already reflecting a little on this in Winnipeg, of course. It was not the start to the CFL season that the Bombers were hoping for here last night.
No, unfortunately, in the rematch of last year's Grey Cup, Marcy, they once again fell to Montreal, this time by a score of 27-12. The Owls have definitely been a bit of a bogey team for the Bombers over the years. Since Montreal returned in 1996 to the league, the Owls and Winnipeg have faced each other 6 times to open the season, and each and every time Montreal has prevailed. Head coach Mike O'Shea put the loss on himself, saying he didn't prepare the team enough for the opening game.
Just felt like we were behind a little bit. You know, I think there was times where we were doing okay, but I don't know that I had them prepared well enough for this one. right? Like just that missing that step, missing a bit of the football sense as we went along. I think we could have done a better job. I could have done a better job getting them ready. Those last bunch of practices in training camp probably could have been a little different.
Now, all of that said, when asked whether he should have given his veterans more reps during the preseason, Marcy, O'Shea said he wouldn't have changed a single thing. One vet that for sure had an off day, though, last night, place kicker Sergio Castillo, who last year set a team record with over a 90% success rate on field goals. Last night, he missed two pretty makeable attempts, and Castillo blames the new balls the CFL is using this year. In an effort to generate real-time advanced statistics, the league began inserting microchips into the footballs. And Castillo says the chips throw off his aim and that all kickers are against them. And he's right, according to the Players Association. Kickers voted 10-1 not to use those balls with the chips in them. So we'll see if the league responds, but chip balls or not, the Bombers are back in action next Thursday in the nation's capital against the Red Blacks.
That sounds like a test we should do. Head out with our kickers and see what the difference is. Yeah?
Yep, I would agree.
Let's go to soccer now. Canada's men's team has a date with the French on Sunday. What are you expecting there?
More of what we saw yesterday, Marcy, in Canada's 4-0 loss to the Netherlands. Given the result, that might sound a bit cheeky, but the Canadians, they're learning a new system under their coach, Jesse Marsh, playing with an aggressive press high up the field, meant to force the Dutch into mistakes. Canada actually had a couple of really good opportunities yesterday. Jonathan David and Kyle Larin come to mind on that front. Here is Jesse Marsh.
The response in every way from every single person involved has been incredibly positive and gives me major optimism. Even losing 4-0, our end vision is 2 years from now, and we're just starting our process. It's almost unfair to have your first match against the Dutch, but so what? We got to grow up as a team, and we've got to figure out ways to get better, and there's no better way to do that than playing against opponents like this.
I love that attitude. It's going to be necessary as well as the road just gets harder for Canada. The match with the 7th-ranked Dutch is behind them, but now they have number 2 France on Sunday before facing the best of the whole bunch, Lionel Messi and the World Cup winning Argentines at the Copa America. As you heard Marsh say, though, Marcy, all of this is a build-up ultimately to the World Cup Canada co-hosts in a couple of years.
And there's a lot going on in sports this weekend, including a certain hockey series.
Yeah, the Oilers look to draw first blood in the Stanley Cup final tomorrow in Florida. A chance to see the game's best player on its biggest stage for the first time. Expect Connor McDavid, Marcy, to receive his fair share of face washes from the gloved hands of Panthers agitator Matt Tkachuk. McDavid was asked about the prospect of such feistiness.
A lot's been talked about their physicality and the way they play and stuff like that. You know, if they're going to take penalties and stuff like that, our power play is good at what we do. I would expect scrums and stuff like that. We're a veteran team, you know, one of the older teams in the league. I don't think that stuff bothers guys in here.
If it is a rough and tumble series, I think the Oilers win it on that basis alone, and not necessarily the feistiness front, but special teams. If they're undisciplined and have to kill penalties, the Oilers have the best penalty kill in NHL playoff history.
We're going to see.
And their power play is not bad either, so we'll see.
All right, thanks. Have a great weekend.
You too.
Also last night, 107-89, Boston over Dallas in the NBA final. Lots to watch if you love sports. Well, but who are you going to watch if you love Winnipeg? We're going to dive into that right after the news this morning. If you're watching the hockey this weekend, Oilers or Panthers, who are you cheering for? CBC's Jim Agapito hit the street to find out. That's after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it's 13 degrees, brilliant sunshine out there, and the wind is calm. It's going to be a lovely day, a high today of 21, but that wind will pick up, and we can't go a day without a risk of showers or a thunderstorm. Threats have forced food trucks planning to be at the Pembina Valley Pride event in Altona this weekend to withdraw. Pauline Emerson-Frobe is president of that group. She says after they announced which food trucks were going to be part of the Pride event, someone threatened to damage their vehicles.
Somebody is threatening their livelihood in order to make a statement. We're just being very hyper aware as to what's going on around us. We're going through more of a breakdown with our security.
Emerson Frobe says this isn't the first time threats have been made. Town officials say Altona Police is aware of the threats and will be monitoring the weekend events. Some Winnipeggers are frustrated at the province's delays in building personal care homes. 8 years after the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority bought land near Polo Park for a new care home, there is still no sign of construction. Jane Pogson's mother is on a waiting list for a bed in a personal care home.
We are an aging population. The steps should have been taken years ago, at least 10 years ago. And people, for whatever reason, governments, people in control, didn't take those steps sooner.
The former PC government promised last year to build 6 personal care homes, but the NDP government ordered a review. The party has since committed to building 4 homes, and construction is expected to start on a care home in Lac du Bonnet later this year. A former chief of Manitoba's
in the
most
north over the next
First
15
Nation
years.
has asked the federal
The tribal
court to
council's
set
chief
aside
says
the
he's
results
excited
of
about
an
the
election
prospect
he
of
lost.
more reliable and
CBC's
affordable
Bartley
power
Kivas
and
reports.
heat.
In 2023,
At
Peg was First Nation
6:32
voted
in
Glenn
Regina,
Hudson
it
out
is
as the band's
cloudy
chief
and
replaced him with Stan Bird. Hudson has asked the Federal Court of Canada to set aside that result. A special sitting is slated for Winnipeg in July to hear arguments in a judicial review. In court documents, Hudson says the election wasn't fair because 178 votes in an advance poll were nullified, 2 other advance polls were cancelled, and, he argues, there were problems with mail-in ballots. In an affidavit, Hudson blames Bird and his supporters for the nullified votes and cancelled polls, claiming they made threats and engaged in intimidation. In response, Bird denies playing any role in affecting the advance polls and says no threats or intimidation took place. Lawyers for Hudson and Bird declined further comment. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The father of an inmate who died after being held in solitary confinement at Headingley Correctional Centre is suing the Manitoba government for failing to keep his son safe. Jeffrey Owen Tate died in 2019. An inquest concluded he died by suicide after spending about 23 days in segregation. The lawsuit filed by his father, Eugene Marvin Tate, seeks damages from the province for members of the family. The statement of claim alleges staff at the jail failed to properly monitor Tate's condition on the day he died. The province has not yet filed a statement of defense in court. Another potential strike is looming, this one by more than 9,000 workers at Canada's border crossings. Because 90% are considered essential, they can't walk off the job, but they could work to rule, in turn, potentially slowing down traffic between Canada and the U.S. The Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters Association says any job action would affect $3.1 billion in manufactured goods crossing the border every day. The union has set a strike deadline of 4 o'clock this afternoon Eastern. That's 3 o'clock Central. Well, the Bombers fumbled the start of their season. A rematch of last year's Grey Cup between Winnipeg and Montreal was played last night here in Winnipeg, but it was Montreal who took control of the game, beating the Blue and Gold 27-12. Bomber fan Dan LeBlanc.
It's going to be tough to, keep this whole level that we have going. I love the squad. I love what we have going. But I think the big thing is to get to the Grey Cup next year because it's at home, baby.
The Blue and Gold face the Ottawa Redblacks next Thursday. You can find more news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Let's get into our regional forecast on CBC. Abby Adiemi, what's up?
Sunny outside, 13 degrees in Winnipeg. We will see a mix of sun and clouds today, and sometime this afternoon we should be expecting a slight chance of showers with a risk of thunderstorm later in the day. It will become breezy with winds picking up from the west, and will touch a high of 21 today. Tonight also partly cloudy and a chance of showers and thunderstorm. Fog patches will be developing overnight, and then that would clear by tomorrow morning. As we head west to Brandon, it is 6 degrees and partly cloudy. Expect increasing cloudiness with a chance of showers and risk of thunderstorm this afternoon. Also will be breezy, high 21. Thompson is at 2 degrees with fog patches. The forecast calls for a mix of sun and clouds, becoming cloudy with a chance of showers later, and you touch a high of 11. Further north in Churchill, it is 1 and cloudy. You're seeing periods of rain and drizzle this morning, and you'll be getting to a high of 2. Dauphin is at 12 degrees and sunny. Forecast today calls for more of this sunny start you're seeing, which would be followed by a mix of sun and clouds and a high chance of risk of thunderstorm, or rather. It will also be breezy, and then we'll get to a high of 20. Gimli is at 11 and sunny for the Interlake region today. Expect sunny conditions, then a mix of sun and clouds and a chance of showers and a risk of thunderstorm sometime this afternoon. The fog patches you saw this morning will be dissipating, and then you'll be getting to a high of 20. Steinbach is at 11 and sunny. Today's forecast calls for mainly a sunny start, and then it's going to be a transition into a mix of sun and clouds and a chance of showers and a risk of thunderstorm this afternoon. You get to a high of 21. And finally, Morris, where it's sunny at 11 degrees. Today's forecast start for the Pembina Valley region, sunny at the moment. Then you see a transition to a mix of sun and clouds, showers and a risk of thunderstorm this afternoon. Then it will be kind of breezy, and we get to a high of 21. We're starting off sunny across the regions, and then we'll be looking at highs around 21.
All right, thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
Corey Funk.
Really quiet commute so far on
Right?
this lovely Friday morning. Yep.
Wake up, Corey. Call.
Yeah, yeah. It's been quite on the commuter line. That's a-okay with me. But if you do see something going on, if you're walking, biking, driving, love to hear from you. Oh, and it's Friday, so if you're let me know about maybe a trail you're hitting up, or you hit one up and you want to let people know what the conditions are, give me a call, 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
Well, let's talk sports. The Stanley Cup finals are this weekend, but who are you going to cheer for? You have choices. Of course, our Jets didn't make the finals, but former Jets coach Paul Maurice did. And if you were a fan, maybe you want to cheer for his Florida Panthers. But a lot of Canadians might be more excited that the Oilers are in the finals. Could they win? Could they take the Stanley Cup? It's been a long time since a Canadian team won the Stanley Cup. Montreal won in 1993, so do the math. CBC's Jim Agapito asked Winnipeggers who they're going to cheer for.
My name's Curtis Howson. I'm the owner of First Row Collectibles.
Stanley Cup Finals is coming up. Who are you cheering for and why?
So that's a tough one because I'm Canadian, so the right answer is to say the Edmonton Oilers. I think they're due because of Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, but at the same time, I'm a Winnipegger, and Paul Maurice spent a lot of time here, so I can go either way. I'd be happy if Edmonton wins for Canada, but I'd also be happy if Florida wins for Winnipeg. Paul Maurice. As a Canadian, you have to lean more towards Edmonton because of the Canadian team. But yeah, I don't know. I'm torn. I'm torn because there's just so many connections. There's Paul Maurice and then Matthew Tkachuk, who grew up here in Winnipeg. But yeah, the Canadian in me still says that Edmonton's going to win, and McDavid's finally going to raise the cup.
Some Winnipeggers I've heard, they want McDavid to win, but they don't want the Oilers to win. How do you feel about that? Have you heard that?
Yeah, I've definitely heard that. And being 42 years old, I grew up having my heart broken by the Oilers every year. I remember going to bed that infamous overtime game, and just every year having Messier or Gretzky, beat Howard Chuck, and so if they do lose, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it, right?
If you were sporting a jersey when you're out with your friends, what will you be wearing?
I will cheer for the Edmonton Oilers, but you won't catch me wearing their jersey. No, thank you. But yeah, you'd catch me wearing a Florida Panthers jersey before you'd catch me wearing an Edmonton Oilers jersey.
My name's Cadence Duke. I'm going to go with the Edmonton Oilers mainly because they're a Canadian team and I don't really watch hockey, so I'm just going to cheer for Canadian teams.
You go to a party and it is everyone there's cheering for a team. You're going to tell them Edmonton Oilers. If you had to pick a jersey, would you be wearing that jersey?
The colors are kind of silly, but I mean, yeah. If they want the Florida Panthers to win, I'd be like, where's your Canadian spirit?
Chris Peters. I'm cheering for the Panthers because I'm a salty Kings fan. The Oilers eliminated my Kings 3 consecutive years in a row. So I also like Tkachuk, so I'd love to see him get a cup. He's old school hockey, tough and gritty, and definitely it'd be awesome to see him get one. But you can't go wrong with McDavid getting a cup. That would be nice to see. He definitely deserves one. You don't want him to be one of those players that goes without one, that's for sure. So Won't be too bad if the Oilers win it, but definitely want to see the Panthers and Tkachuk get it. I was kind of fantasizing maybe McDavid would play for the Kings one day and pull a Gretzky and end up there and he could win it there, but I don't think that'll happen.
If you were to make a final prediction, what would you say?
Hoping Panthers in 6. Reality, probably Oilers in 5.
Keaton Housen, cheering for Edmonton Oilers.
Okay, why?
More Canadian players, and it would be nice to see Connor get a Stanley Cup. I think that the Oilers are just competitors to us, but, you know, they're a Canadian team, so I want them to win it. I'm not a big fan of the Panthers. I'd rather see Edmonton win it. I'm just cheering for Edmonton.
Who do you think is going to win, and what's the series going to be at?
Edmonton's going to sweep them.
Sid Bloom. I'm going for the Panthers.
Okay, why the Panthers?
I just think that they come so close the last little while, and with the coaching change, you know, they've got the dedication, and I think they have the drive to win the cup.
Paul Maurice, you know, the former Winnipeg coach, is the coach here. Does that have any influence on your decision?
Absolutely. I mean, once he joined the team, you know, they just moved up and up during the year, and now they're in the finals. And I'd be happy, honestly, if either team won, because it's, you know, it's a great championship. It's historical and it's important. And, you know, there's so many Canadians that are playing the game and have historically played the game. You know, it's always a great display. It'll be a 6-game series.
With the Panthers winning?
Yes.
It's Jared Rader. Well, I'd like to see Edmonton do it. I have a lot of history, actually, with the Edmonton Oilers. In 2001, me and my brother and father, we went to Edmonton, and we got taken into the dressing room, and the entire team signed a jersey for us, and I still have this jersey to this day. So I would like to see the Oilers do it. You know, it'd be nice to get the Stanley Cup back in Canada. Obviously, it's not Winnipeg, and I'm a big Jets fan, but I'd like to see Edmonton do it. Paul Maurice, you know, being our head coach, you know, brings, you know, a lot of history. But it's a credit to, you know, his abilities that he was able to, you know, go down to Florida, and now they're in the Stanley Cup Finals. So, you know, all credit to him for getting put in a better position to win. It's unfortunate he couldn't do it with the Jets, but is the way it is.
There is a lot of Winnipeggers who have a little bit of, you know, I want McDavid to win the cup, but I don't want the Oilers because of the history of burying the Jets. How do you feel about that? You are cheering for the Oilers.
Well, I mean, the simple fact of the matter is that, you know, that's Gretzky, and, you know, that was Gretzky, Wayne Gretzky in his heyday. I mean, quite frankly, Wayne Gretzky destroyed most teams, including the Jets. But, you know, I'll be a diehard Jets fan until the day I die. But it would be nice to see a Canadian team get the cup and bring it back to Canada. It's absolutely going 7, and if Edmonton is to take it, it'll be Edmonton in 7.
CBC's Jim Agapito checking in with Winnipeggers and Winnipeg Jets fans for who they're going to cheer for in the Stanley Cup Finals now that our team is not in, or I should say since our team didn't make it in. So the Oilers and the Panthers, Game 1 tomorrow.
Sing and sway to R&B on Marvin's Room. Move and groove to the rhythm of Saturday Night Jazz. Crest with the best next wave of Indigenous music on Reclaimed. Savor the flavor of the Francophone world on C'est Formidable. And treasure the arias and encores on Tempo Weekends. Saturday night means music on CBC Radio 1 and on the CBC Listen app.
Well, if you're looking for music this weekend, go to manitobamusic.com. The season has certainly begun. I know we're just early June here, but there's so much going on, especially if you want to take a day trip. So the Prairie Wind Music Festival is happening in Cypress River. There's a second annual Gimli Blues Fest that is going on as well. In addition, there is the Ella Street Festival in town here in Winnipeg. There's the Thrillage in the Village. They're going to be having some live bands in Osborne Village. And most of these events are happening tonight, in fact, including Quiet, who's going to be opening the opening reception at the gallery tonight to look at First Fridays as the city starts to really open up with all kinds of summertime events. And Chaos is in town playing the Bulldog Event Center. So all kinds of things if you want to get out and enjoy music. You can check out manitobamusic.com. We this morning have a tune, though, next from a group called the Lemon Bucket Orchestra. They have a new record out. They blend traditional Ukrainian harmonies, so sort of Balkan rhythms and things, with a punk aesthetic. And that is channeled from their acclaimed live shows. Their new record's called Cuckoo. This is the Lemon Orchestra with the title track.
Що, куми, готові? Летів пташок понад дашок, та й себе та силі. Хто не має дівчинонька, ту бога щасливий. Vuela, vuela, el pajarito, vuela muy bonito hacia el infinito. Хто не має дівчинонька, бога щасливенький. Йому ніжка цупоки на один веселенький. Esa palomita me rompió el corazón. Solo vuelo sin ninguna razón. Летіла зозуля через мою хату. Я сіла на калині, да й стала кувати. Я сіла на калині, да й стала кувати. Ой, кувала зозулечка, ти казала куку. Не питай мене даремно, а бери за руку. Vuela, 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 vuela con mi pajarito. Vuela muy bonito hacia el infinito. Ой, кувала зозулечка, ти казала хай. Як я піду з цього світу, буду кому жаль. Esa palomita me rompió el corazón. Entonces yo vuelo sin razón. Летіла зозуля через мою хату. Сіла на калині, да й стала кувати. Ой, сіла на калині, да й стала кувати.
How's this for get you up and moving on a Friday morning? Fun, right? This is a group out of Toronto. They're called the Lemon Bucket Orchestra. This tune's called Cuckoo. And we were trying to identify the languages in the tune. So I was like, well, there's Ukrainian in there. And then Corey, our show director, was like, there is Spanish in there. Corey's right. There is. So it's like a punchy Balkan brass fun with the band. And they do have Ukrainian and Spanish rap against these traditional polyphonic vocals. And this is also, by the way, their title track of their latest album. So if you're digging it this morning, it's called Cuckoo, and you can check it out online. They're out of Toronto, as mentioned. It's 11 minutes to 8 o'clock right now on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team here at Information Radio on CBC. It's 13. It's sunny outside, a high of 21. It's going to pick up this afternoon in terms of the wind, and we do have a risk of a late afternoon thunderstorm. Well, coming up after 8 o'clock on the program, imagine if you didn't have to go through menopause because it was medically delayed. Would that be a good thing, and what would be the drawbacks of that? So we're going to hear all about the science behind that coming up after 8 o'clock on the program. Next, however, the trial of Jeremy Skitzki, heard this week from two experts who assessed the admitted Winnipeg serial killer. And one testified that Skitzki should be found not criminally responsible due to a mental disorder. The other, though, disagreed. Skitzki pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder in the deaths of 4 Indigenous women, Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, Rebecca Contois, and an unidentified woman given the name Mashkade Bishike Ikweban. The CBC's Caitlin Gowerlich has been covering the trial, and she is here once again this morning to walk us through these developments. And we always are mindful to warn you that some of the details are naturally distressing. Good morning.
Good morning.
So what specifically did we hear in the trial this week?
So we really got to the core of that argument of, is Jeremy Skitzki criminally responsible for killing those 4 women whose 2022 deaths he's admitted to? So we heard, like you said, 2 dueling opinions on that in court from 2 different experts. Both of them assessed his mental state over the last few months. We know sometimes in cases like this, the experts will maybe agree on a mental disorder, but disagree on whether it affected the person enough for them to be found not criminally responsible. But in this case, actually, they didn't even agree on the diagnosis.
So who were the experts who testified?
So there were 2 forensic psychiatrists, one hired by the defense, the other enlisted by prosecutors. The defense expert was Dr. Shahom Das, so he's a forensic psychiatrist based in the UK. He assessed Skitzki twice, once in September of 2022, and then again this past April. And this expert has a YouTube channel. And that came up in court as the court decided whether to qualify him as an expert in the trial. We watched clips in court, too, from that YouTube channel, including some where he told people not to confess if they murdered someone and listed ways to fake having a mental illness. He said that those were supposed to be sort of tongue-in-cheek, but those videos drew some criticism, including from Court of King's Bench Chief Justice Glenn Choyal. He ultimately ended up letting him testify as an expert, but the judge said those concerns are going to be revisited later as he determines how much weight to give his opinion. And then we also heard from the prosecution expert, so Dr. Gary Shamovitz. He's based in Hamilton, Ontario. His expertise wasn't contested in the same way as the defense expert, and he also assessed Skitzki last month.
Let's start with the defense then and digging into some of the details. What did their expert have to say?
So again, that's Dr. Shahom Das, the UK expert I just mentioned. So he said that in his opinion, Skitzki was motivated by delusions and psychotic symptoms he said were caused by schizophrenia when he killed those 4 women. Dawes said that Skitzki told him that he was hearing voices from angels, from the Holy Spirit, or from God, encouraging him to kill those women, and he believed he was on a mission from God. That expert said Skitzki appeared to be overwhelmed with a strong belief that his victims were in some way impure, and that if the victims were not subservient to God, he felt compelled to physically destroy them, he said. Skitzki told the expert that he repeatedly performed sex acts on the women's bodies after killing them because he said he believed he needed to sanctify the body as part of that process. So while Skitzki actually told police when he confessed in 2022 that the killings were motivated by race, he told this psychiatrist that he only said that because he'd been overtaken by an entity that he said could have been either God or the devil, which was speaking on his behalf. Doss said that he believed there were glimpses of those delusions in Skitzki's police interview and signs earlier in his life, too, that he was schizophrenic based on his medical records. He also said he believed that Skitzki knew that what he was doing when he killed the women was illegal, which is, he said, why he did things like throw out their remains and search online for how to do that. But he thought that his actions were morally right, this expert says, which means in his opinion, Skitzki would meet the criteria for not criminally responsible because his mental disorder would have made him unable to appreciate what he was doing was wrong.
So what about the expert who testified for the prosecution?
Yeah, so that one was Dr. Gary Shamovitz, the Ontario expert I just mentioned. And he basically completely disagreed with everything the other experts said. He thinks Skitzki made up his claims that hallucinations or delusions drove him to kill the women as a way to avoid basically being convicted of murder, and he saw not criminally responsible as an easier way out for that. According to this expert, Shamovitz, he said there was no evidence in his opinion that Skitzki has schizophrenia, and that anytime it did come up in the medical records, it appeared to be because Skitzki himself said he thought he had the condition, not because a psychiatrist diagnosed him with it. Instead, this expert believes Skitzki was motivated by what's called a homicidal necrophilia, so an arousal to having sex with people he's killed. He also diagnosed him with an antisocial personality disorder and substance abuse disorder. And he said he likely also had some psychopathic features, but this expert noted he didn't specifically assess him for psychopathy. He said Skitzki's actions and behaviors pointed to, he called him a conspiracy-laden racist man with significant personality problems and addictions, and that his description of his psychotic symptoms stretches credulity, he said. He didn't believe he had schizophrenia for years without being detected by any of the doctors he saw. He said also that he believes the likelihood that the killings were linked to any kind of psychosis seemed extremely low. He said even if those thoughts were present, which he said he thought was highly unlikely in itself. And unlike that defense expert, he said that he believed that Skitzki actually did know that his actions were also morally wrong in addition to legally wrong. He said there was no mental disorder affecting that, and so he shouldn't be found not criminally responsible. This expert also commented on the victims, the 4 women who Skitzki killed, who prosecutors argued that Skitzki targeted at homeless shelters. And this expert noted that they belonged to a vulnerable, accessible group and said that the fact that Skitzki is soft-spoken, outwardly gentle and thoughtful are features that could have disarmed potential victims.
So a lot here this week. What is next now in the trial coming up of Jeremy Skitzki?
So we're now at the point where all we have left is closing arguments. Those are scheduled for Monday. And it'll sort of likely just be a rehash of the case, things we've heard already. So for the Crown case, they presented evidence that included that video confession to police I mentioned, surveillance videos of Skitzki disposing of the women's remains, DNA evidence from the victims, online searches done on Skitzki's computer, messages he sent online, letters he sent to another inmate. For the defense, the only evidence they introduced was that expert who testified he believed Skitzki was schizophrenic. After those are presented, those final arguments, it'll be up to the judge to decide. We don't really have any sense of how long that'll take. It's expected he'll reserve his decision, though. We probably won't get it on Monday, but it'll be up to him about deciding not whether Skitzki killed the 4 women, he's admitted to that, but whether he was criminally responsible for their deaths or if he did, in fact, have a mental disorder that made him unable to understand that it was wrong.
Thank you, as always, for walking us through all of this.
Thank you.
And we'll talk to you next week. Mm-hmm. That is Caitlin Gowerluck. She's been in court. This is a reporter. She's a reporter, with CBC Manitoba, and you can read more on the story on our website at cbc.ca/Manitoba. Now, speaking of developing news, let's go to Heather Wells right now for our news headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, some Winnipeggers are frustrated at the province's delays in building personal care homes. 8 years after the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority bought land near Polo Park for a new care home, still no sign of construction there. We're going to hear from one woman whose mother has been on a waiting list for a bed in personal care home. A former chief of Manitoba's most populous First Nation has asked a court to set aside the results of an election he lost. In 2023, Peguis First Nation voted Glenn Hudson out as the band's chief, replacing him with Stan Bird. Hudson is now challenging that result. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 8:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Let's just mention traffic here. We've had a pretty good morning commute so far, but if you do have something that you're spotting out there, please give us a call, 788-3093. Let us know. We'll pass it along. In Winnipeg, it's 13. It's sunny. Our high today, 21. Now, this afternoon, risk of a thunderstorm late in the day, 30% chance of showers, and it's going to be windy again. Winds 30 to 50 this morning. And extending into the day. Well, coming up after 8 o'clock on the show, imagine a world where menopause is not part of aging. Researchers believe they're working toward that reality. Stay tuned.
Today on Q with Tom Power.
Kaisa is the Juno-winning artist known for the dance hit Hideaway. That was 10 years ago, but in 2017, Kaisa was in a car accident that left her with a traumatic brain injury. Kaisa will be here to talk about her recovery and now her return to music. That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current.
Is offering a course in Black gospel choir music, what that means for the place of Black music in history and for students, coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. This is World Report. Good morning, I'm John Norton.
The latest
Good
job
morning, I'm
numbers
John
are out.
Northcott.
The unemployment
The
rate
latest
for
job numbers are out. The unemployment rate for the month of May was 6.2% after sitting at 6.1% in April, a rise despite the fact that 27,000 new jobs were added. As Peter Armstrong reports, the job market expected to remain soft and the continues to lower those interest rates.
These jobs numbers paint a picture of an economy that's still struggling. The unemployment rate rose because largely more people are moving to Canada and we're not adding enough jobs to keep up. One other interesting tidbit in here is that people are working part-time hours in their main job. This is what economists call an involuntary part-time rate. And it's not a great sign that the economy is really kind of chugging along right now. As of May, StatCan says there were 1.4 million Canadians who were unemployed. That's up 28,000 from last month, in spite of the fact that Canadian employers added 27,000 jobs in that same period. And this weakening of the labor market writ large has been a long-term trend. This has been happening over months and over quarters. And even now that the Bank of Canada has started to lower interest rates to help move the economy along, it's still going to take a long time for that longer-term trend to turn itself around. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Toronto.
MPs are now under pressure to propose changes to Bill C-70. It would give new powers to security agencies to crack down on foreign interference. And there is new urgency after an intelligence watchdog report earlier this week found that some MPs have been helping foreign states to meddle in Canadian politics. Janice McGregor has more on this. Janice, yesterday, Public Safety Minister Dominic LeBlanc assured Canadians that people who have chosen not to respect Canadian law will be held to account. But what do we know about what the RCMP is actually doing in the meantime?
Very little, John. Although the RCMP late Wednesday did take the extraordinary step of issuing a public statement confirming that it recently received what it called additional information about election-related interference, and saying it has now initiated investigations, plural. But that statement also warns that if police talk publicly about their active criminal probes, that could not only interfere with ongoing investigations, but also damage individual reputations before they're even sure they have enough proof to prosecute a case. We do know that these investigations are recent because the special committee of parliamentarians that reviewed the classified intelligence, it submitted its unredacted version of its report to the government in March, and that report said Mounties weren't investigating interference at the time of the last two elections. No one's revealed yet exactly what new intelligence got passed on that set law enforcement in motion.
Even as the government and law enforcement are under fire for not doing enough, there are concerns that this bill goes too far. What are those?
The Public Safety Committee that's doing a very quick review of C-70 heard from groups that are asking Parliament to slow down and think twice yesterday, amid concerns that the bill's new powers for intelligence agencies and law enforcement risk trampling on charter rights. Here's Ahmad El-Qadi from the National Council of Canadian Muslims.
If the bill was passed tomorrow, a current government could identify protest activities that they just don't agree with and penalize them under the pretense that they're aiding, a foreign entity.
In other words, a bill trying to protect democracy from foreign interference threats might actually stomp on democratic rights and freedoms in other ways. Well, there's an urgency to get this bill in place before the next election. Civil liberties groups want parts of it hived off for more careful examination.
Janice McGregor in Ottawa. Thanks, Janice.
You're welcome.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says Europe is no longer a continent of peace. This as he meets Western partners in Paris today. Leaders at the D-Day commemorations in Normandy have also been drawing parallels between the Second World War and the conflict in Ukraine. Julia Chapman reports.
After Western leaders commemorated 80 years since D-Day, discussions turned to stopping the latest war on European soil. Volodymyr Zelensky is meeting the leaders of France and the US, both of whom bring new offers of military support. France will provide warplanes and train Ukrainian pilots and soldiers. America is putting forward a $225 million package, including munitions, mortar systems, and artillery rounds.
Саме з тих перемог
In a speech at France's National Assembly, President Zelensky said Europe is no longer a continent of peace because of Russia's war. He said President Vladimir Putin is crossing line after line and warned that the conflict could spread. Against that backdrop, President Joe Biden will make another speech in Normandy today. At D-Day events, he urged allies to fight for democracy and stand up to dictators. He's expected to call for a rejection of isolationism and compare the sacrifices of the Second World War with those being made by Ukrainians today. His speech will be a message to some right-wing politicians on both sides of the Atlantic and a rallying argument for backing Ukraine. Julia Chapman for CBC News, London.
Meanwhile, final ceremonies for the 80th anniversary of D-Day are wrapping up today in Normandy. Hundreds gathered for a somber event at a Canadian War cemetery. CBC's Julia Wong was there.
Please rise for the arrival of the Canadian veterans and their families.
A round of applause as 10 Second World War veterans from Canada enter Bretteville-sur-Lez Canadian War Cemetery. More than 2,800 are buried here, the vast majority of them Canadian. Something not lost on the mayor of the town where the cemetery is.
A place of calm, reflection and commemoration, this cemetery is not a sad place.
Rows and rows of headstones line the peaceful cemetery. It's impossible to ignore the lives lost, says Minister of Veteran Affairs Jeanette Petitpas-Taylor.
Our return to the sites where so many Canadians, fallen service members, fought and died for peace, freedom, and democracy we enjoy today underscores the importance of their sacrifice.
For 100-year-old General Richard Romer, it's personal. The D-Day veteran took a moment of silence at one headstone when he arrived and later had these words for the crowd.
All of the people here who are as old as I and as veterans are here for the purpose of remembering their comrades who are in this graveyard. I have several. It's a long time ago, but it's important for people like me to attempt to come and pay respects to them and to the people who are here today, remembering them. It's very, very important.
Julia Wong, CBC News, Santo, France.
Here at home, Montreal police, using tear gas, have cleared out a group of pro-Palestinian demonstrators occupying an administrative building on the grounds of McGill University. Last night's police action saw officers storm the school building and make 15 arrests. Jennifer Yoon has more.
It took just minutes for Montreal police to disperse a crowd gathered outside the McGill administration building in support of pro-Palestinian protesters who had taken it over. Police say those on the inside were escorted out of the building. Rama Al-Mala is a spokesperson for Solidarity for Palestinian Human Rights McGill.
I just got tear gassed with a bunch of my other comrades, but morale is still high. And we're still here for the same reason that we were here on day one.
The protesters were calling on McGill to cut ties with Israel, something the school has so far refused to do, offering instead to look into divesting from weapons manufacturing companies and revealing its investments. A large pro-Palestinian encampment elsewhere on campus is still standing. McGill's next legal challenge to the encampment will be heard July 25th. Jennifer Yoon, CBC News, Montreal.
The more than 1 million people who rely on this country's largest public transit system can start their day with a sense of relief. Toronto's Transit Commission, the TTC, is operating normally today. The union local representing nearly 12,000 TTC workers says it has agreed to, quote, a framework settlement with management. Details like wage increases and job security have not been finalized, and a formal deal has not been reached, but they say they're on the right track.
I think we've started the road for our members to get the value that they deserve and they're entitled to get. I think we've started to get the protections that we need to protect not just transit workers, protect transit. That's what we're calling out.
That was Marvin Alfred, president of ATU Local 113. Despite the framework being reached, Alfred says the mood at the bargaining table has been frustrating.
There is a culture here where we have a problem with an employer that stands in the way of progress at times. It feels as though they're not really aligned with us in providing any sort of opportunities for transit to be delivered in a comprehensive way.
The framework settlement is meant to last until March 2027. That is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
How you doing, Manitoba? And good morning, Winnipeg. Thanks for making us part of your day. It is sunny in Winnipeg. It's 15 degrees, and we are live downtown. You're listening to CBC 89.3. Might also be on the app or on YouTube this morning. Thanks a lot for joining us wherever you have made us part of your morning. It's 15, as mentioned. Winds are calm now. They're going to pick up later, though. Our full forecast in a few minutes from now. Well, we've got quite a story this half hour on the show. It is generally understood that menopause is a normal part of aging. But what if it wasn't? CBC producer Julie Dupre is going to join us in looking at the scientific advances that could make pausing menopause and maybe even eliminating menopause a reality for current and future generations. But is it always a good thing medically? We're going to find out. So stay tuned. That's a full report this half hour with Julie Dupre. Right now, though, let's get into headlines and news with Heather Walls.
Good morning. Well, Canada's unemployment rate continues to inch higher. Stats Canada says it's now at 6.2%, up from 6.1% in April. The latest figures just released in the last half hour show a modest growth in jobs of 27,000. However, that was still more than most analysts had predicted. Threats have forced food trucks planning to be at Pembina Valley Pride in Altona this weekend to withdraw. Pauline Emerson-Frobe, president of the group, says they announced which food trucks were taking part, and then someone threatened to damage their vehicles. We'll hear more in our next local news at 8:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Let's get into this forecast. Abby, what do we know?
15 degrees in Winnipeg, enjoying some sunny stuff. A chance of showers this afternoon. There's also risk of thunderstorm late in the afternoon. It will be breezy, becoming west, and then picking up later. We'll see a high of 21. Tonight's forecast, partly cloudy, chance of showers in the evening. Again, a risk of thunderstorm. Some fog patches will develop overnight, and then we'll dip to 10. But tomorrow, same as today. I'll just tell you today, we have lots of sunshine out there. The wind is currently calm, and it's going to be picking up later. And then it's going to be another beautiful day, heading to a high of 21. But one thing I've noticed in the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like few days, it's the forecast always mentions showers and thunderstorm. So it's gonna
every day.
Yeah, so we're gonna see that. Just put that on your list. Expect showers and thunderstorms somewhere in between.
Seriously, I look through next week. It's like it's the same kind of thing. It's not letting go
similar.
of us yet. Yeah,
it's just like copy and paste.
By the way, radio listeners don't need this apology, but if you're on YouTube, sorry for the big, huge yawn I just let out. It's a known thing that when you look at sunshine, sometimes you yawn.
True.
So that's my excuse. Let's get into what's going on right now in the morning commute. Corey?
Yeah, it's been really quiet actually out there this morning. But I did get one call from Celso who said he was driving earlier today and he saw a coyote at the corner right at Dakota and Meadowood crossing the road. So look out there. There may be a coyote around. But that's really the only issue I've heard out there. But if you do see something going on, give me a call at on the CBC commuter line. That number 204-788-3093.
There are stories.
Well, up first, with many changes, the texture of our hair, our skin changes, our metabolism slows, and for about half the population, there is a life stage that comes with a lot of varying symptoms.
I burst into tears for absolutely no reason. Is it perimenopause?
Oh, I don't know. Is it?
What do you mean? You're my doctor. What?
Oh, it could be. There's not really much research. I mean, who really cares, right?
Oh, man, that hits home. That was from the Baroness von Sketch show. But in reality, frustrations around perimenopause or menopause are common. So what if we could just get rid of that stage of life? Researchers are looking at some possible ways to delay and potentially eliminate the so-called big change. CBC radio producer Julie Dupre has been looking into this, and she's with me now in studio. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy.
So to start, let's make sure we're all on the same page when it comes to the topic and the definitions. What are we talking about when we say menopause?
So menopause is a point in time 12 months after the last menstrual period. So this means that the ovaries have stopped releasing eggs for fertilization, and it generally marks the end of the reproductive years. Hormonally, there's less estrogen and progesterone produced. And that drop in estrogen levels is actually what's behind most of the symptoms of menopause. And those symptoms can vary widely. Dr. Michelle Jacobson is a Toronto-based menopause specialist with the Society of Obstetricians and Gynecologists of Canada.
When we talk about estrogen withdrawal, we're thinking mostly about hot flashes and night sweats, but there are many other validated symptoms of menopause that also can start to present around a time of hormonal change, like in perimenopause or in menopause. And that includes things like mood changes, sleep disturbance, libido changes, joint and muscle aches, changes in cognition and memory, heart palpitations, and changes in the lower urogenital tract as well.
Now, the World Health Organization says menopause generally happens between the ages of 45 and 55 years, but it can sometimes happen much earlier, and science doesn't really know why in some cases menopause arrives earlier for some people than for others. But it is generally believed that genetics play a role.
So why is delaying menopause something that researchers are looking into?
Well, it's because of the many potential health impacts. Now, the hormonal changes that happen during menopause can increase the risks of certain types of cancers, heart disease, stroke, osteoporosis, and even lead poisoning. The body uses energy differently, and fat cells change, making weight gain easier. There's also potential mental health impacts like depression and anxiety. But again, it's not always understood why menopause increases those health risks. A quick internet search will find multiple ways people claim you can delay menopause through dietary choices or certain supplements. But Dr. Jacobson says those are unproven. However, she says there are ways to alleviate certain symptoms of menopause, such as hormone replacement therapy.
What are some of the specific areas, Julie, that researchers are exploring around delaying menopause?
Well, there's a pharmaceutical approach and a surgical one. This California-based company called Oviva Therapeutics is currently testing a drug that would replicate the anti-Mullerian hormone, or AMH. Higher levels of AMH mean the ovaries have a larger supply of eggs. At menopause, AMH levels drop to zero. So the theory is that by artificially increasing AMH levels, the body will be tricked into thinking it's not in menopause. Meanwhile, at Columbia University, there's a clinical trial underway looking at how the drug rapamycin affects ovarian aging. Dr. Zev Williams is the director of the Columbia University Fertility Center.
We and others have shown that in mice, this medication can slow the ovarian aging process down. And this study now is the first of its kind anywhere in the world where we're trying to extend that basic science research that was done in cells and in animals to see if we see the same benefit in humans.
You also mentioned surgical methods, Julie. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, the surgical method is a procedure that involves freezing ovarian tissue to later be transplanted into the same patient's body. This process has been used for more than a decade for certain cancer patients who must endure treatments that can impact fertility. Yale University is now studying its potential as a treatment to delay or eliminate menopause, but a company called ProFem Health in the UK is already offering the service for a fee. They have a waitlist of about 200 patients, and 20 have already had their tissues frozen for menopausal treatment. However, because the company is so new, none of them have been through the transplant process yet for menopausal delay.
What are the potential implications of what we're talking about, of eliminating menopause?
Well, studies have shown that the average age at the start of the first menstrual cycle, or menarche, has changed significantly over the last 180 years, from 16 and a half years to 12. Now, it's unclear why that is, but the average age of menopause has remained consistent. And by delaying menopause or eliminating it, that means an even longer period of hormone exposure. And that's something that raises many questions for Dr. Michelle Jacobson with the Society of Obstetricians and Gynecologists of Canada.
I don't think we know that allowing women even to make their own hormones into the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, and beyond will have a positive outcome on a cardiovascular, on a brain, on breast cancer, like in terms of those issues. And so I would be concerned that talking about delaying menopause takes on the sort of shape of talking about being young forever, and that there may actually be risks that are increased that are associated with it.
But Dr. Zev Williams at the Columbia University Fertility Center is optimistic these efforts will pay off in the long run, and menopause for humans could someday become optional.
Across the animal kingdom, menopause is a very, very rare exception. The only animals that actually undergo menopause are humans and some species of whales and great apes. So it really is a rare exception. And it's almost as if the timing of ovary aging is out of sync with the lifespan of women today. So when people lived just into their mid-40s, then if the ovary had a lifespan that just lasted 50 years, that wouldn't really have a big impact because most people weren't even living to that age.
Dr. Williams hopes to have results from the rapamycin clinical trials in about a year and a half.
Can you even imagine if this is the gift we give the next generation, being able to change this so significantly? Really interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.
CBC's Julie. Yesterday, actually, with that special report. She's a producer for CBC Radio in Winnipeg.
We carry a world of information in our pockets because we want to know. Breaking news that shapes our world. Staying on top of stories around the globe. And connected close to home. It's news you can trust. Delivered when you want and where you want. On Canada's News app. Now with CBC Radio 1. Local and live. Download the CBC News app for free.
Friday morning, 8:21 a.m., June 7th. Thanks for joining us. 15 in Winnipeg, lots of sunshine, a high of 21 today, and late this afternoon we could see another risk of a thunderstorm, and it's going to be windy like yesterday. We've got a bit of a commuter update here. We got a call northbound Pembina just before Point Road. There's a stalled car in the curb lane that's causing big backups, caller said. So keep left to get around, and thanks so much for updating us on the commuter line. 788-3093. Once again, northbound Pembina just before Point Road. Well, we have music this morning to entice you to get out to Gimli this weekend. Gimli Jazz Fest kicks off today, and tonight's show at the Gimli Park Pavilion begins with a Gimli High School Jazz Band. They also have Robert Andreas and Glowing Hearts, as well as Blue Noise and South Thunderbird Band. And Winnipeg's Romy Mays is actually the headliner tonight. Here she is with Aching in Your Bones. Headlining at the Gimli Blues Fest tonight, Romy Mays and Aching in Your Bones on CBC.
It creeps into my veins like a steady pulse of light. I'm sleeping through the days, I'm up all hours of the night. I'm distant from the world like an empty hollow stare. Closer to the end, but I don't care. The West Coast sun is warm, but them folks don't like to smile. I followed up the trail of crumbs to Eddie's quarter mile. The prairies call my name each time I feel the eastern breeze, and I turn my back to walk these empty streets. And I spent 40 hours coming down that Greyhound bus low. 40 hours ain't too long when you don't have a home. 40 hours longing for a place to call your own. It's 40 hours aching in your bones. hairs upon my body remind me of my age. A lonesome disconnection from the inside to the cage. If I had only listened to these thoughts inside my head, I wonder where I might have been instead. And I once thought I loved you, and maybe then I did. You might have loved me too, but I was just a rambling kid. And I see it all so clearly now. I had to leave you then, and I knew I'd never see you again. And I spent 40 hours coming down that Greyhound bus alone. 40 hours ain't too long when you don't have a home. 40 hours longing for a place to call your own. It's 40 hours aching in your bones. 40 hours aching in your bones.
Headline in the Gimli Blues Fest tonight, that is Rami Mays and Aching in Your Bones. So it's a 2-day festival. It's their second annual. Go check it out. It's a short drive from Winnipeg. Tomorrow night, by the way, Big Dave McLean's going to be the headliner out in Gimli. And there's lots going on. I was mentioning this in the last hour of the show, but check out manitobamusic.com. And they've got a whole live music page that alerts you to concerts both in Winnipeg here, but also all around the province. You can check out the offerings for June 7th. There's tons of them. We're getting into that time of year. It is 8:27 a.m. and speaking of the time of year, bright and beautiful this morning when I got up. Once again, didn't even need the outside house lights at 4:30 in the morning. It was that bright. It's still bright right now. If you're heading out, you likely know that you need your shades. Lots of sunshine, 15 degrees, a high of 21. This afternoon, though, we will get a mix of sun and cloud and a 30% chance of showers. Once again, risk of an afternoon thunderstorm. And that's what we're looking at for this afternoon. For the rest of the weekend, chance of showers overnight. Windy. Tomorrow, mix of sun and cloud. And then on Sunday, hopefully a clear day. Sunny and a high of 20 for Sunday is what the forecast is saying right now. The commute has been pretty good this morning. We do have that one issue that we were telling you about that you might want to pay attention to, which I've completely erased off screen, Corey, as soon as I said that.
I got it. Northbound Pembina. There's a stalled car in the bus in the curb lane. So that's right before Point Road. So keep left to get around that. The caller said that there is causing some pretty big backups there. So do look out for that.
High fives, teamwork. Thank you.
Oh, no problem. I got you.
You're also here because you got Janet Stewart's back today because Janet's off Radio Noon. You're hosting.
That's right.
What's the calling conversation? It actually is. It's unfortunately timely because of some serious incidents that have happened.
Yeah, we're talking bike safety today. As you probably maybe have heard in the news already, there was a fatal collision between a cyclist and a vehicle yesterday at Wellington and Cobourg. And then shortly later, after yesterday night at Furby and Broadway, there was also another cyclist hit by a vehicle. That cyclist is in hospital in stable condition. So we think this is an opportunity to talk about cycling safety here in the city. We want to hear from you. We want you to call and share your stories. If you're a cyclist or a motorist as well, about, a lot of people have those stories of close calls because, maybe poor infrastructure or just, poor practices out there on the roads. We want to hear from you about how to make the roads safer. We're also going to be joined by the executive director of Bike Winnipeg to share his thoughts, what he'd like to see. And we are inviting you to call in. And in the meantime, if you want to tell us on our listener line, if you don't want to call in live, but you want to call in now to share your thoughts, give us a call. 204-788-3797 is our Radio Noon listener line. And tell us how you feel out there on the roads if you're a cyclist or a motorist about cycling and the conditions for cyclists out there on the roads.
All right. Thank you, Corey.
Thank you.
So Corey, guest hosting this afternoon on Radio Noon, and the timing is good because Corey, as you know, he shares often on the air here with us, commutes by bike a lot to work.
Sure do.
Yeah, and year-round in many cases. So good conversation, important, timely, unfortunately timely because of those incidents this week involving cyclists. But between 12:30 and 1 is the call-in. You can leave a message, as Corey mentioned, 788-3797, or tune in right here at 12:30 and call in. It is coming up to 8:30. I want to give a quick thank you to all the hardworking people in our unit. Corey Funk, Abby Adiyemi, Chloe Friesen, Issa Kixon, Kalkademu Legeda, Sierra Sanders, Chidi Akuma, Jim Agapito, Dylan Longhurst, Daniel Friesen, Marshall Hodgins, and Bruce Layden. Our community reporter in current affairs at CBC Manitoba is Shanley Vidal, hosts in unit Nadia Kidwai, Faith Fundal, Janet Stewart, producer in unit Wendy Parker, YouTube producers Brad Lillies and Kevin Nipatebo, as well as Nelly Gonzalez, the show's producer overall of the current affairs unit, and Leif Larson is the senior producer of audio at CBC Manitoba. Thank you, everyone, for your work this week and always. Right now, your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it's 15 degrees. It's beautiful out there. Just very light wind, but that wind is going to pick up through the day. Some clouds moving in, bringing with them a slight chance of showers, maybe even a thunderstorm, and a high today of 21. Food trucks that had planned to be at the Pembina Valley Pride event in Altona this weekend have pulled out. Pauline Emerson-Frobe is president of the group. She says after they announced which food trucks were taking part in the event, someone threatened a business online.
Somebody threatened to tag their vehicle, to do damage to their vehicle. And because of that, the company understandably decided to withdraw.
Emerson-Frobe says the Pride Group has hired private security for the event. She says this isn't the first time threats have been made. Town officials say Altona police are aware of the threats and will be monitoring this week's events. Canada's unemployment rate continues to inch higher. Stats Canada says it is now 6.2%, up from 6.1% in April. The latest labor figures released this morning show the economy added 27,000 jobs last month. Now, analysts agree high interest rates continue to weaken the job market. But with the Bank of Canada making its first rate cut in 4 years earlier this week, there is hope the trend could soon be reversed. Manitoba's unemployment picture improved last month to 4.9%. It had been 5.1% the month before. Some Winnipeggers are frustrated at the province's delays in building personal care homes. 8 years after the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority bought land near Polo Park for a new care home, there's still no sign of construction. Jane Pogson's mother is on a waiting list for a bed in a personal care home.
We are an aging population. The steps should have been taken years ago, at least 10 years ago. And people, for whatever reason, governments, people in control, didn't take those steps sooner.
The former PC government promised last year to build 6 personal care homes, but the NDP government ordered a review. The party has since committed to building 4 homes. Construction is expected to start on a home in Lac du Bonnet later this year. A former chief of Manitoba's most populous First Nation has asked a court to set aside results of an election he lost. In 2023, Peguis First Nation voted Glenn Hudson out as the band's chief, replacing him with Stan Bird. Hudson is challenging that result. A special sitting of the federal court is slated for Winnipeg in July to hear arguments in a judicial review. In court documents, Hudson says the election was not fair because 178 votes from an advance poll were nullified, and 2 other advance polls were cancelled. Bird denies playing any role in affecting advance polls. The father of an inmate who died after being held in solitary confinement at Headingley Correctional Centre is suing the Manitoba government for failing to keep his son safe. Jeffrey Owen Tate died in 2019. An inquest concluded he died by suicide after spending about 23 days in segregation. The lawsuit filed by his father, Eugene Marvin Tate, seeks damages from the province for members of the family. The statement of claim alleges staff at the jail failed to properly monitor Tate's condition on the day he died. The province has not yet filed a defense in court. Well, one final spin. After 41 years and more than 8,000 episodes, Pat Sajak's final turn as the renowned host of Wheel of Fortune will air tonight. The television icon announced a year ago he would retire from his hosting duties at the end of the show's 41st season. And during an emotional tribute last night, Sajak's co-host and longtime letter turner, Vanna White, described her partner as, quote, like a brother. And Ryan Seacrest is slated to succeed Pat Sajak as host. Hasn't Ryan Seacrest hosted everything already?
Yeah, I think so. Everything but Wheel of Fortune, I guess. And that's
and now he's got that.
Wow, 41 years, crazy.
Thank
Can
you,
Heather.
imagine, hey?
No, well, actually, no, because I'm at 20 years at CBC. How long have you been reading the news?
26 here, and then 26 here.
So we got to be careful with what we say. Maybe we can imagine. Take care, Heather. Have a wonderful
Have a great weekend.
Heather Wellstrom. On in the morning commute with Corey.
Yeah, it's just northbound Pembina. There's a stalled car in the bus lane right before Point Road, so keep left to get around that. Causes some big backups, says the caller.
All right, so stay here, Corey, because after Abby, we're going to talk about another community studio that we're going to be taking up next week.
Sure
but
thing.
Abby, take us into the weekend with the last look at your weather forecast here.
Yes, it's 15 degrees in the city at the moment. It's going to be a lovely day, almost normal. The highs are supposed to be 23, but today we're headed to a high of 21. We started the day with some sunshine. We're going to see a few clouds later, and then there's this tinny chance of showers and even thunderstorm later today. Across the province, we're experiencing sunny stats, and it's going to turn to a mix of sun and clouds. We'll see highs around 21.
Thank you, Abby.
You're welcome.
Well, next week, we're going to be on location. Our community studio is going to be the YMCA in downtown Winnipeg specifically, because they just passed a milestone anniversary, and lots of changes there, Corey.
145 years. They've actually been in that downtown building for 111 years. Can you believe that? Yeah.
But if you think of the Y as a place to go and work out and exercise or swim, it certainly still is, but it also is expanding to meet people's needs.
Yeah, and I was actually just there yesterday and talked with some people who have been referred to the Y from doctors for their mental health courses. So they're really growing their offering to the community. So we're going to be exploring that a little bit.
And also their connection to an ever-changing downtown Winnipeg. So that is next Wednesday. We're live at the Y. If you're listening and you're thinking, I use the downtown Y, tell us, call us, be part of the show. 788-3205. Leave us a message on the listener line. Maybe we'll see you out there. In the meantime, take care, be well. I'm Marcy Marcusa. The Current is next.